It was underground in the valley that Master and I met. Tian walked to the valley with concentration and vigilance as he spoke. Hearing the news about the demon world, Xianran and Yen Yunyang looked at each other. One took out Ho Yi's Bao and the other took out Tian Lu Onet. They were left and right, and the guard was around Yi Tian. Yi Tian looked around and said nothing. He still walked carefully to the valley, and Yuan Tian's eyes looked at the ground. The plume of black gas came out from the deep underground through the soil, and the source happened to be at the original position of the locked dragon Ju Xian array. At this time, the field shield of Suolong Ju Xian array could not find half a trace under Yi Tian's careful investigation. The original life and death reincarnation array in the field shield disappeared, the tall and dark Emperor Ming disappeared, and even the body of the Flint Emperor disappeared. Is it? This is the sign that the demon cultivation is going to rush out of the demon world and enter the Earth Star? Yi Tian murmured in his mouth. He didn't get out of the valley until he carefully checked the whole valley of life and death. Underground, I didn't see any shadow of Ming Xiu, but there was a dark hole in the original position of the demon emperor. The diameter of the hole is about 3 feet. It is dark inside. The black gas that penetrated the underground soil came out of the dark hole, spilled into the soil, and then drifted to the ground. Master, the smell here is strange. Xianran observed the valley and frowned. Yes, there is the smell of demon cultivation here, but it is only the residual smell of demon cultivation. If the demon cultivation enters the Earth Star, I'm afraid it will be a more serious catastrophe in the underworld. After all, with the cultivation of the Flint Emperor, the flesh still appears here, which is enough to see the horror of the demon world. Yi Tian nodded solemnly. Palace Master, if you do your best in the Maitreya Palace, you may not be able to win the demon world, not to mention we still have a lot of cards. Yen Yunyang said carelessly, with confidence in the strength of the Maitreya Palace between the lines. Okay, I believe that the Maitreya Palace is bound to win. However, it's better to treat the demon world as carefully as possible. Next, we should make some arrangements to prevent the demon cultivation from entering the Earth Star in advance, and then try our best to deal with the demon cultivation after dealing with the underworld. You wait here first, and I'll come. Yi Tian said that, with a flash of body and mind, he had performed the earth hiding technique and entered the underground. Soon he came to the mouth of the lacquer black hole hundreds of feet underground. He observed silently, motioned, took out the mountain and river seal, and quickly enlarged the mountain and river seal above the dark hole. With the power of mountains and rivers, in an instant, an underground space of 100 mu has been created in the deep underground, and the center of the space is just the dark hole. Put away the mountain and river seal, Yi Tian took out a Shumi ring and began to lay Huafan stone in the created space. Around the dark eye of the demon world, Yi Tian soon arranged a large number of Huafan stones in this 100 mu underground space. At the next moment, Yi Tian's body flashed and returned to the ground again. Xianran. Yi Tian said to Xianran, take your martial spirit puppet in guard in the eye of the underworld. No one is allowed to enter the Earth Star from here. After I deal with the affairs of the underworld, I will concentrate on the affairs of the demon world. Then I will send you reinforcements. Yes, Master, the old slave must live up to the great trust of the Palace Master. Xianran promised. He was already in a flash and entered the ground. Yunyang, let's go. Yi Tian then said that he had left here with his heavenly spirit wings. A moment later, he returned to the Western Theater. There are many things to do. Yi Tian arranges one by one. The most important task is the field division. The dark chi of Mabe Fog Sea has long been absorbed by the field arranged by Morong Chuchu, but the dark chi of the 7 fog seas also needs to be cleaned up and will no longer give any space for Ming repair, which is a very heavy task. After Yi Tian arranged, Morong Chuchu led the field branch to start busy. The task of Tiangong Division is to refine 2 more Huafan stones, one of which is used for the 3rd fog sea to seal the entrance of the underworld again, and the other is prepared for the eye of the demon world. As for some other disciples, they guarded 8 entrances to the underworld separately to prevent the underworld from breaking open all stones and re-entering the Earth Star again. At this time, Yi Tian called the high level of the Maitreya Palace together to discuss again. In addition to the great friars of Yupu territory and the heads of various branches, Ning Yao also participated in the meeting. According to the current situation, I'm afraid there will be some changes in the demon world in the near future. With the strength of the Maitreya Palace, I won't be afraid of the underworld or the cultivation of the underworld. However, in order to avoid the two-line battle between the underworld and the demon world at the same time, I decided to completely solve the problem of the underworld before there are changes in the demon world, at least to make the underworld unable to cause damage to the Earth Star in a short time. Threat, Tian said, looking around at the audience. Palace Master, the disciples agree to your plan. Everything is arranged by the Palace Master, and at his disposal, Nuranjan took the lead in responding. However, how can we make Mingxiu completely honest? Although they were defeated this time, they may not have moved their strength. Since Mingxiu can use the holy fire of the underworld to melt the Huafan stone that suppressed the entrance of the underworld, it is possible to repeat his old skill and reopen the entrance of the underworld to enter the Earth Star. Now it seems that each entrance of the underworld must be closely guarded. Yan Zhongkai said solemnly. Yi Tian nodded slightly. Therefore, it's necessary to guard against the dark world. In case, all entrances to the dark world are guarded by heavy soldiers, but this is only a way to cure the symptoms rather than the root cause. As the saying goes, there are people who have been a thief for 1,000 days, but there is no one who has been a thief for 1,000 days. In order to make the dark world honest for a while, I'm going to enter the dark world personally and give them some means to try. I'll solve it completely after the things in the demon world are settled in the future. The problem of the underworld. Isn't it dangerous for the Palace Master to go to the underworld in person? Tan Suqing looked concerned when she heard the speech. Yi Tian waved his hand and said, "It doesn't matter. This time, I'm not going alone." Yan Yunyang and Mu Rongjuan followed together, bringing 2,000 elite disciples and 10,000 martial spirit puppets. As he spoke, Yi Tian gestured, and a Shumi ring appeared in his hand. He said, "There are 3 main tasks this time. One is to kill the high-level Mingxiu as much as possible, the second is to kill the holy fire in the underworld, and the third is to bring a disaster to the underworld with the ashes of Shumi ring." Robbing embers? The Palace Master has robbing embers in his hands. It's terrible enough to destroy countless cultivators. The Palace Master must not be hurt by robbing embers. Yan Yunyang was shocked and said, "As the Lord of the Temple, there are countless news about robbing embers, so she knows this kind of thing better." Yi Tian smiled and said, "Don't worry about this. Although the destructive power of robbing embers is frightening, the Xianyin stone treasure clothes are enough to resist the breath of robbing embers. Since the underworld dares to invade the Earth Star, let them taste the pain of robbing embers." It turns out that Xianyin stone treasure clothes have such a magical effect that they can resist the smell of robbing embers. However, Palace Leader, even if Shumi ring is full of robbing embers, it is not enough to pose a great threat to the underworld. Although I don't know how big the underworld is, even if calculated according to the surface area of Earth stars, the number of robbing embers contained in a Shumi ring should not be enough. Yan Yunyang's face showed a shocked look and turned to ponder. Yi Tian waved his hand and said, "There is no need to worry about this. There are 10,000 robbing embers in the Maitreya Palace, which is enough to teach the underworld a painful lesson." 10,000 need to be warned? So many? The great friars of Yupu territory of the temple branch and the second branch of Tiangong couldn't help but show a look of shock, while the principals of the other branches naturally knew about Guanghan spiritual region, and naturally didn't feel surprised at all. You carefully select people, recognize the Lord, make preparations in advance, and set out one day later. Let's go back and prepare. Yi Tian said no more and stood up. A day later. The third entrance to the underworld in the Fog Sea. There is still black fog here, but the entrance of Nuada's underworld has not been filled with dark qi. Yi Tian, Yan Yunyang and Morong Jun stood at the edge of the cave and observed it. Old 19, watch here. Don't let any of the nether practitioners enter the Earth Star again. Behind them, the children of Shueiyue's sect stood upright. Yi Tian gave Morong clear instructions. Then, even if they jumped into the entrance of the underworld, Morong Jun and Yan Yunyang followed Yi Tian and entered the entrance of the underworld. Inside the entrance, there was no light, it was dark. However, this situation does not affect Yi Tian's vision. The surrounding situation can be seen clearly. With his deepening, he gradually sensed the power of space, but this power of space is very weak, which may not pose a great threat to ordinary low-level friars. In the wide space, the fog is dense and moves without wind. Walking through such a space channel, you really feel like you are in the fog sea. They kept a little distance and were on alert to walk through fog. Nothing unusual happened a long way. I don't know how long later, in the invariable black fog in my mind, different colors finally appeared. That is the endless white bone world at the end of the space channel. Endless white. So the underworld is like this. Closer and closer to the exit of the space channel, Yi Tian murmured in the air and said to Yan Yunyang and Morongjun behind him, "It seems that Mingxiu is still very hospitable." He even organized such a large welcome team. In the mind induction, countless netherworld practices have gathered at the entrance of the underworld. Under those netherworld practices, countless white bone houses are built on the white bones, which are also boundless. The underworld is really powerful. There are countless deaths and injuries on the Earth star. It can gather so many people in a short time. Yan Yunyang shook her head and said. Yi Tian said with a smile, "It's so good." As he spoke, the mountain and river seal he had already prepared began to enlarge rapidly and open the way in front. Pooh! A wind burst, and the mountain river seal flew out of the space. Under the cover of Dian, Yi Tian, Yan Yunyang and Mu Rongjuan also flew out of the space channel. As soon as the three appeared, countless bone guns and bone swords flew towards the two, dense and glittering white light everywhere. Unfortunately, under the suppression of Shaniyin, as soon as those terrible bone guns and bone swords were shot near Shaniyin, they all stood still in the air and could no longer move forward for half a minute. Yi Tian was not in a hurry to fight, but looked around at the boundless nether cultivation under the seal of mountains and rivers, and spread his body far away. Yi Tian, the leader of the Earth Star Mithraea Palace, visited the netherworld to repay the gift. Yi Tian, the army of the underworld has withdrawn from the Earth Star. What else do you want? Yi Tian's voice just fell, and an ethereal voice came over. Yi Tian concentrated on sensing, but he did not sense the source of the sound. On the contrary, the sound seemed very strange. In the fog sea around the Earth star, the sound never appeared. What else do you want? Under the seal of mountains and rivers, Yi Tian laughed. Old devil, on the Earth star, you once warned you skeletons. If you withdraw at that time, maybe the Earth star and the underworld will stop fighting in the future. However, you are determined to go your own way and organize a large-scale decisive battle again. Now you are the defeated side. You don't have the ability to talk about conditions. If you don't do anything, wait for Ye's revenge. Yi Tian, the underworld is not afraid of you, but if you fight like this, it won't be good for both sides. Your humanoid magic weapons should consume a huge amount of best fairy jade. Isn't it good to leave those resources for disciples to practice? Moreover, you have seen the power of the holy fire in the underworld, which is enough to melt your big seal magic weapon. In fact, your dependence is not dependence. The ethereal voice continued. Then let's rely on our abilities. Yi Tianko said with a gesture. The mountain and river seal was magnified to the extreme and covered more than 100 mu. Many people around had no time to retreat and were shrouded by the mountain and river seal. Like the bone gun and bone sword suppressed by the mountain and river seal before, it was fixed around the mountain and river seal. Revenge from Earth Star begins. Yi Tianlang said in a voice and motioned. His more than 2,000 puppets were called out, smashed the heavy bone gun bone sword, and rushed to the mountains and rivers pressed by the town. In an instant, white bones were flying, and many Mingxiu were cut to pieces. Retreat. The ethereal voice didn't seem to have any emotional fluctuations, but the voice spit out two words coldly. With this sound, countless meditation practitioners around began to swarm back. Want to go? It's not that easy. Yi Tianling snorted, and the mountain river seal suddenly flashed from the air and flew to one side, enveloping a large area of Mingxiu who had not had time to withdraw within the range of the mountain river seal. What followed was the ruthless slaughter of Wuhuan puppets. Yi Tian has no pressure to enter the underworld. He just wants to kill Mingxiu. He doesn't have to bother to intercept Mingxiu to prevent them from harming the common people. For this part of the suppressed meditation, the rest of the meditation did not take into account and continued to retreat madly without being affected. At this time, on the side of the Maitreya palace, it was only Yi Tian and his own martial spirit puppet. Yan Yunyang and Mu Rongjuan stood by, let go of their thoughts and felt the surrounding situation. When they first entered the underworld, they had to be careful and take precautions around Yi Tian, so as not to use any strange means. It is full of dark fog everywhere, which has great restrictions on the mind. With their realm, they can only sense the situation within 100 miles around. For them who often let go of the mind for tens of thousands of miles, there is no doubt that they have a natural vigilance for places outside the mind. This wave of Mingxiu, which was suppressed by the town, was killed before long, and those Mingxiu had retreated far away, tens of miles away. Yi Tian didn't chase them immediately, but released a magic weapon cave and slowly magnified it in the air. Cicada! Yi Tian whispered. Master! With a crisp sound, the cicada flew out of the magic weapon cave. Let's go! Yi Tian touched the head of the cicada and said gently. Yes, Master, today I finally feel that I am still a little useful, hee. The cicada smiled playfully and began to feel in the distance. Green charm? Yan Yunyang and Morong Jun were slightly surprised when they saw the cicada. It was the first time they saw a cicada and knew that Yi Tian had such a disciple for the first time. With their cultivation and knowledge, they immediately saw what the body of the cicada was. However, they were still shocked that a green charm could cultivate to the later stage of the golden elixir realm. Yes, during this time in the magic weapon cave, He Chan's cultivation realm has made a breakthrough again, and has broken through to the later stage of the golden elixir realm, which is not far from Yi Tian's cultivation realm. At this time, the cicada looked engrossed, and her small nose kept playing. A moment later, she showed a happy look in her eyes and said a few words to Yi Tian with her mind. Yi Tian nodded slightly, and then said to Yan Yunyang and Morongjun, you can arrange to rob the embers. Yes, Palace Master. Yan Yunyang and Morongjun nodded slightly and released their magic weapons. More than 2,000 elite disciples came out of the cave. These people already know the task arrangement of this trip and are ready. Each disciple carries a lot of Shumi precepts full of looted embers. Yi Tian's 100 dead are among them. They know the best about robbing embers and take the lead in action. Taking Yi Tian's location as the center, a large number of looted embers began to pour down and cover those bone houses. Robbing embers? Yi Tian, are you too cruel? Actually sowing robbing embers in the underworld? At this time, the ethereal voice appeared again, but different from before. This time the voice was full of shocked tone. No, Yi is cruel? If you knew today, why did you have to start? Yi Tianling said. Yi Tian, don't be too arrogant. Let me tell you, the flame of the underworld has gone to melt another big stone you suppressed at the entrance of the underworld. It shouldn't be long before you can reopen another entrance. At that time, the army of the underworld will enter the Earth Star again. At this time, if you return here, the underworld will withdraw, otherwise, you can go wild here, your Earth Star, it will also be a mess. If you don't believe it, try it? The voice suddenly said with a strange laugh. Just try. Old devil, did you say that she didn't guard against you? Yi Tianling snorted, not moved by the other party's words. Well, since you know current affairs so well, let's break the fish's death net, the voice said and fell silent. 2,000 elite disciples of the Maitreya palace scattered and occupied a good area. Red looting embers poured out of Shumi Ring, and soon the area within a dozen miles was full of looting embers. But this is only the beginning. Around the entrance of the underworld, the scope of spreading looted embers continues to expand. At this time, the people have released the rest of the martial spirit puppets and scattered in all directions to expel the surrounding white bone Mingxiu. Yi Tian is also holding the shrinking mountains and rivers, wandering around, looking ready to take action at any time. Morong Jun and Yan Yunyang are not idle either. They are separated from each other, forming horns with Yi Tian and protecting on all sides. The looting embers emitting the smell of destruction expanded rapidly, and more bone houses were covered with looting embers. The original settlement of Mingxiu became a dead land. Forced by the martial spirit puppet, Mingxiu began to retreat continuously. Even if he was far away from the center of robbing the embers, he was still retreating. It was not long before he gave up the range of hundreds of miles. At a certain moment, Yi Tian's body shape suddenly disappeared from the original place. Then it appeared in another direction. Then disappeared again and appeared from another position. After so many times, when his figure disappeared again, it took a long time to reappear. Yi Tian, where have you been? When Yi Tian's body just appeared, the ethereal voice in the sky appeared again. Haha, I didn't expect you to gossip so much. What's the matter with you? Where ye goes? Yi Tian laughed and said that he did leave this time just now. He went to a treasure house of Mingxiu in the distance and collected a large number of Mingxi, many of which are the best Mingxi of high quality. However, Yi Tian didn't tell him that he should practice meditation in a high state, so that the other party wouldn't make preparations and transfer the treasure house in other places. Yi Tian, don't be crazy. Your time of death is coming soon, said the voice, and Jia laughed strangely. When the sound fell for 3 or 4 breaths, a light suddenly appeared in the dark chi. With the light approaching quickly, it can be seen that it was the holy fire of the underworld that melted all the stones. The holy fire in the underworld. Yi Tianxiang murmured, holding back his excitement. Yi Tian, you should know the power of the holy fire in the underworld? It's too late to go now. As the voice finished, the holy fire in the underworld, which was less than 100 miles away from Yi Tian, suddenly expanded rapidly, turned into a boundless sea of fire and spread wildly towards Yi Tian. What can the holy fire in the underworld do? Yi Tianling snorted, and his original spiritual fire was called out. The original spiritual fire just appeared was just a flame, but in a flash, it turned into a sky flame and greeted the holy fire in the underworld. The original spiritual fire condensed by a friar still dare to compete with the holy fire in the underworld? Yi Tian, you really don't know the greatness of heaven and earth. Haha, I'm afraid only the samadhi real fire of the Sui Emperor can compete with the holy fire in the underworld. Yi Tian, if you don't roll back to the Earth Star, you'll be dead. In the dark fog, the ethereal voice laughed wildly. Yi Tian didn't answer again, but stared at the two colliding flames. Obviously, the holy fire in the underworld is extremely powerful and is by no means an ordinary thing. But his original spirit, fire, and fire spirit should be a little better in his opinion. However, when he saw the two flames competing, he couldn't help showing a look of surprise on his face. Not because his original spiritual fire is too weak, but because it is too strong and powerful, which has exceeded Yi Tian's cognition. I remember not long ago, when he was fighting with Mingxiu, he used the original spiritual fire to fight against Mingxiu, but it was not as fierce as it is now. At this time, in the sight, the two flames collided violently. Originally, the two equal flames had a little meaning of competing against each other. Just in the twinkling of an eye, Yi Tian's original spiritual fire became extremely powerful. The fierce flame rose into the sky and wrapped the holy fire in the underworld for a moment. Even Yi Tian could sense that today's original spiritual fire was particularly active, as if he suddenly saw food after being hungry for a long time, and even became crazy. After Yi Tian's original spirit fire became crazy, the game between the two views of fire has been divided. In the line of sight, you can't see the red underworld holy fire, but only the red and black original spiritual fire. The underworld holy fire is completely wrapped by Yi Tian's original spiritual fire. How is it possible? How is it possible? How can you have the samadhi true fire of the Flint Emperor? In the dark fog, the ethereal voice began to roar, with an angry look. Why is it impossible? Yi Tian laughed. Yi Tian had a premonition of victory when he told the true fire of the samadhi of the Sui Emperor before that voice, but he didn't expect that his original spiritual fire was suddenly so terrible. Impossible, Yi Tian. Who are you from the Flint Emperor? The voice asked in horror. Pass on, disciple. Yi Tian said these 4 words coldly. You're a disciple of Emperor Sui. No wonder. No wonder. The imitation mountain and river seal was refined for you by Emperor Sui. The voice was even more flustered. Do you think this is an imitation? This is a real mountain and river seal. Yi Tian said with a sneer. Yi Tian, you can't fool me. You are the imitation mountain and river seal, because the real mountain and river seal is in mine. The voice said here and suddenly stopped. Yi Tian was shocked when he heard the speech. Although the other party didn't finish his words, Yi Tian had heard it. If the other party didn't have any conspiracy, the words that didn't come out below must be similar to those in the other party's hands. This is absolutely groundbreaking news. Yi Tian went deep into the underworld this time just to realize his previous strategic intention. Now he accidentally got the news of the real mountain and river seal, which made him ecstatic. Inferring from the situation just now, the other party should not have spoken, and that remark should have been made unintentionally. Otherwise, how could he know that this treasure is the mountain and river seal? And insist that this treasure is a mountain and river seal to prevent? Unless the real mountain and river seal is in his hand. Thinking so, Yi Tian repressed his excitement and said with a cold hum, Yi naturally knows this. This time, he came to you to get back the mountain and river seal. Dream, Yi Tian, you can't get back the mountain and river seal. I'm afraid you can't even find the real body of the emperor, and you're not ashamed to say you want to get back the mountain and river seal, the voice said disdainfully. Then Yi will destroy your underworld. While looking for a topic, Yi Tian lured the strong man in the underworld who claimed to be the emperor to continue to make a voice, hoping to lock this person's position through divine thoughts, but he failed to do so. After sneering a few times, the voice was silent. Cicada, feel carefully again. Do you have any treasures, especially those with the smell of mountains and rivers? Yi Tian waited for a moment. He didn't see the powerful Mingxiu talking, so he gave a voice to the cicada around him. Master, I understand. The real mountain and river seal is in the old ghost's hand, but you can't feel where he is now. I felt it carefully before and didn't find a similar smell. This can only show that the old ghost is not nearby. Now I can sense the treasure much better than my mother. As long as it is within a certain range, I can sense it and lock the person holding the treasure through the treasure smell, even if the other person is invisible. When I find it slowly, I don't believe I can't find the old ghost. The cicada immediately said. Cicada, you are getting more and more powerful. Yi Tian smiled and rubbed the cicada's hair. His face was spoiled. No matter how big the underworld is, as long as the old ghost is in the underworld, Yi Tian believes that he can't run away. Simply, he's not in a hurry to find it. He'll finish what he has to do step by step first. In the sky, the battle between the two flames finally came to an end. The raging fire began to shrink a little, until finally, all the flames suddenly stopped, quickly shrunk, turned into a red and black flame emitting a terrible smell, and slowly flew to Yi Tian. Go and attack Mingxiu. Yi Tian was happy. It was obvious that the holy fire in the underworld had been swallowed up by his own original spiritual fire, and the quality of the original spiritual fire reached a new level. It seems that it is much more terrible than before. Under the command of Yi Tian's conscious command, the original spiritual fire returned to the body, turned into a sky flame again, and swept away towards the nether cultivation in the distance. Those Mingxiu were in a daze. They saw that the flame was subdued by Yi Tian. Now they rolled back and ate them back. They all scattered and fled to the distance again. However, the fire speed of the original spirit under the control of the fire spirit is so fast. Under the turbulent fire, countless nether practices have been swept into it and become part of the raging fire. Yi Tian. The voice sounded again, looking very angry, but then there was no following, and it was silent again. The fire was blazing, and its lethality was so strong that even Yi Tian was surprised. Unexpectedly, he swallowed the holy fire in the underworld, and his original spiritual fire was so terrible. For him, this is a great good thing. In addition to the mountain and river seal, his killer mace also has an original spiritual fire that can keep pace with the mountain and river seal. Congratulations, palace leader. The original spirit fire is great. Yan Yunyang and Morangjun could not help but look slightly frozen when they saw such a situation. They were shocked and said hi to Yi Tian. It's not Deshang. Originally, my original spiritual fire is very terrible. It integrates the samadhi true fire sent by the Sui Huang. It's extraordinary. Yi Tian said with a smile. No wonder, this original spiritual fire alone is enough for meditation and digestion. When the palace master's fire is completed, I'm afraid it can sweep everything. Morongjun suddenly realized that once everything has something to do with the Sui Emperor, it is the supreme existence. Just now, the powerful Mingxiu said that unless the fire of the samadhi of the Sui Emperor can restrain the holy fire of the underworld, but unexpectedly, Yi Tian's original spiritual fire just integrates the fire of the samadhi of the Sui Emperor. Is everything doomed? When Yi Tian's original spirit fire showed its power, the elite disciples of the Maitreya palace were still quickly taking out the looted embers from Shu Mi Ring and sprinkling them on the white bones of the underworld. Without the interference of netherworld cultivation, the sowing of looting embers went smoothly. The burning embers on the ground spread around little by little, symbolizing death and destruction. The burning embers quickly covered the vast bonehouse area. The area covered by the looted embers is the place of death for Mingxiu. Terran friars have all kinds of means to resist the erosion of the smell of looting embers in a short time, but Ming cultivation can't. The structure of the body itself determines that their immunity to looting embers is very low, just like in the Great Wilderness Spirit Domain. Because of looting embers, the Ming clan launched a comprehensive attack on the Terran area. This is a terrorist force that can destroy the Pluto as long as the number is enough. Unfortunately, the number of looted embers Yi Tian now has is not enough to destroy the whole underworld, because it is not sure how big the underworld is. However, only from the number of netherworld practices invading the Earth star, the vastness of the netherworld has exceeded imagination. I'm afraid the number is not enough even if all the looted embers in the Guanghan spirit domain are put into the netherworld. A few hours later, with the entrance of the underworld as the center, looting embers were arranged within 100 miles. At this time, Mingxiu left countless burned debris and fled thousands of miles away. The original spiritual fire was also summoned back by Yi Tian and raised in the Dantian. Withdraw to Earth Star. As soon as Yi Tianlu let go of his mind to investigate, he gave an order, and then sent the cicada back to the magic weapon cave. The martial spirit puppet also received Zumaji. Almost at the same time, Yan Yunyang and Morongjun were ready to finish, and took back the Wuhuan puppets and the elite of the Maitreya palace. Then, Yi Tian moved, jumped into the space channel and embarked on the way back to Earth Star. There was no change in the way of return and origin. After a lot of time, the three finally arrived at the entrance of the underworld. However, the entrance to the underworld, which was originally directly connected with the Earth Star, has been covered with new Huafan stones. Under the light of Yuantian's eyes, Yi Tian can see the Maitreya palace disciples patrolling back and forth above the Huafan stones, as well as some standing martial spirit puppets. Situ Juanru's action is not slow. Although he refined all the stones in 5 times the time field, he can reclose the entrance to the underworld in such a short time. It can be seen that Tiangong branch is still working hard. Huafan stone can suppress Mingxiu, but it can't stop Yi Tian's footsteps. At this time, he took back Yuan Tianyan's eyes, and the 5-element bead appeared in his hand. The mana gently urged him to send out a halo with a diameter of about 1 zhang. Then he nodded to Yan Yunyang and Morongjun. The three moved, penetrated the Huafan stone within the halo range, and went up. It's the Palace Master. See the Palace Master. When the disciples of the Maitreya palace saw that it was Yi Tiansen coming out of the space channel, they immediately looked relaxed, hung down the half-immortal soldier magic weapon in their hands, and saluted respectfully. Yi Tian smiled and nodded. He glanced around and happened to see Morongjun feel the situation here and fly over. Shen, you can withdraw most of your staff and send a few disciples to be on duty here. The underworld should not be able to break and melt all the stones again in a short time. The other disciples can arrange to practice in the magic weapon cave in the field for 5 times and adjust the state to the best. Yi Tian said to Morongjun, who fell nearby. Yes, Palace Master. The Huafan stone in the 4th adjacent fog sea was broken by the underworld a few hours ago, and a large number of underworld repairs poured out, but they were all killed, and none of them could get out of the fog sea. Morongjun agreed to report. Okay, you can arrange it here. I'll go there and have a look. Yi Tian said, took Yin Yunyang and Morong Jun, spread the heavenly spirit wings, passed through the heavy dark qi, and flew directly to the fourth fog sea. In a moment, the three of them had flown into the fog sea and went straight to the entrance of the underworld. Before waiting for the entrance of the underworld, I sensed that it was now in full swing. Yi Tian came to the entrance of the underworld with a flash of body shape. He saw the war situation here. He saw that a wide Huafan stone rainproof belt had been laid around the entrance of the underworld, with a width of 4 or 5 miles. But it was full of white bones. Except that Huafan stone could still play the role of binding mana, it could not see the true face of Huafan stone from the appearance. Because the black Huafan stone has been completely covered by numerous white bones, and it is a thick layer. The accumulation of white bones seems to form a bone mountain. In the sky above the White Bone Mountain, the disciples of the Maitreya Palace, together with many martial spirit puppets, are frantically killing the Mingxiu who swarmed up from the entrance of the underworld. Under the suppression of Huafan stone, they can't exert any magic power after flying out of the entrance. Any disciple of the Maitreya Palace who has magic power can kill this kind of netherworld cultivation who can't exert magic power. What's more, the disciples of the Maitreya Palace who can be arranged to stay at the entrance of the underworld are high-level disciples, at least with the cultivation of the Golden Elixir realm. It's really easy for a friar with such accomplishments to stop and kill the meditation without any mana. But even so, those netherworld practitioners continued to pour in from the entrance of the underworld, trying to break through the siege of the disciples of the Maitreya Palace and into the netherworld fog. However, no matter how many meditations poured out, they just repeated the fate of those previous meditations and were ruthlessly killed on the Huafan Stone Isolation Belt. Yi Tian was suspended outside the Huafan Stone Isolation Belt. Seeing this scene, he was very clear that this time the hell cultivation was really urgent. The holy fire in the hell was swallowed, which really touched the foundation of the hell. The so-called emperor of the hell actually ignored the death and life of such a number of hell cultivation. As time went by, the white bone pile around the entrance of the underworld became higher and higher, just like a bone mountain. Countless people died on the isolation belt of Huafan stone around the entrance of the underworld. It is impossible to accurately count the number. Until this time, there was no more meditation in the space channel. Since someone else has killed us, we can't say it if we don't go back and visit. Seeing that the underworld side has stopped attacking, Yi Tian said to Yin Yunyang and Morangjun, and jumped into the entrance of the underworld. There is not much difference in structure between the entrance of the underworld here and the last entrance of the underworld. It is also filled with dark qi. The three of Yi Tian walked through the space channel. Before long, they met a large number of meditation. When they returned to the underworld, they were chased end to end by Yi Tian-san. In the wide passage they saw, there were dense figures of white bone Mingxiu. Sensing that after catching up with the three people who came to Yi Tian, those Mingxiu began to flee wildly. However, the channels in front were full of white bone Mingxiu who withdrew to the underworld. The space was blocked by the army of the underworld. Even if the Mingxiu behind tried hard to escape, he couldn't play the fastest speed. Yi Tianling snorted in thought, calling out the original spiritual fire. As soon as the original Linghua appeared, it still looked like a little phoenix, and then turned into a towering fire, sweeping forward along the space channel. In an instant, the nether cultivation in the passage was engulfed by the fire. The original spirit fire did not stop at all. It seemed that it just flashed past and rushed forward and disappeared in sight. Where the terrible flame of the original spirit fire passes, those white bone Mingxiu who were originally fleeing are like hot porcelain suddenly meeting cold water, breaking into countless pieces, even into a piece of debris and falling down the space channel. The space channel in front of Yi Tian was devastated in an instant. All the Mingxiu burned by the original spiritual fire, even if it just flashed by, would be like this. What a terrible flame! Even as a great monk in Yupu territory, Yin Yunyang couldn't help but say something secretly. This original spiritual fire is the nemesis of Mingxiu. Morong Jun next to him also sighed. Speed up. Yi Tian didn't say much. The original spirit fire in his sight had disappeared. He ordered him to take the lead in breaking the heavy broken bones and chasing forward. With Yi Tian in front and Yin Yunyang and Morong Jun behind, the three were in the shape of horns. they were on guard and walked through the channel quickly. At this time, Yi Tian, in the eyes of Yan Yunyang and Morangjun, is definitely no longer an ordinary monk in Yuanying territory. The monk in Yuanying territory who can kill Qing'anzi in Tiangong territory has become a powerful existence beyond Yupu territory. Although Yi Tian never gave play to his powerful attack to kill the Heavenly Palace, they both agreed that maybe Yi Tian would pay a considerable price if he wanted to make such an attack, so he didn't make it, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have such strength. Therefore, in their hearts, the so-called support is just to share Yi Tian's worries. They don't want Yi Tian to use that kind of terrorist attack at a cost under unnecessary circumstances. After a lot of time, the three finally penetrated countless white bone debris from the wide space channel and came out of the space channel. As you can see, there is still a thick dark chi here, but in the dim dark chi, you can see a red flame flying around in the distance. Near the space passageway, like the same passageway, there are endless bone houses spreading. Wherever the line of sight can reach, there are bone houses of different sizes and situations. Yi Tian vaguely understood that there may be dense meditation at every such space channel, so this arrangement is likely to guard the space channel and make sufficient preparations for entering the Earth star. However, it is useless now. Under the terrorist attack of the original spiritual fire, Yi Tian sees that there are many burned bones in the boundless bonehouse community, densely covered on the bonehouse or scattered in the open space between the bonehouses. Even some bonehouses were affected by the original spiritual fire, collapsed and broken, and look like white bone ruins. Within tens of miles, the living white bone Mingxiu can no longer be seen. The terrible original spirit fire is chasing countless fleeing Mingxiu in the distance. From the number of white bones here, we can see that there are a large number of white bones Mingxiu gathered here waiting to attack the Earth star through this space channel. Otherwise, there would not be such thick bones. It saves us from doing it. After looking around, Yi Tian nodded slightly to Yin Yunyang and Morongjun, directly arranged to rob the embers. The original spiritual fire is killing Mingxiu everywhere, and the disciples of the Maitreya Palace are quickly arranging to rob embers. The scope of robbing embers is also centered on the entrance of the underworld here, covering 100 miles around. In this way, it should effectively prevent the underworld from approaching the entrance of the passage. Jiajin arranged for several hours, and it was going very smoothly. No Mingxiu dared to stop it. Even the voice of the Ming Emperor that once appeared did not appear again. Moreover, through the induction of Cicada, Yi Tian found a treasure house of Mingxiu here again and obtained a large number of top-grade Mingxiu. When the arrangement of the looting embers within 100 miles was completed, Yi Tian called back the original spiritual fire and returned to the Earth star with Yin Yunyang and Morongjun again. It is not so easy to find other fellow entrances from the underworld. The simplest way is to enter the entrance of the underworld directly from the Earth star through the space channel. Yi Tian is going to adopt this strategy. However, after returning to the Fog Sea this time, Yi Tian was not in a hurry to enter the next Fog Sea, but returned to the Western Theater. In a magic weapon cave here, Yi Tian met Ning Yao. Yaoer. Yi Tian was surprised to see Ning Yao in cultivation. At this time, Ning Yao had broken through to the peak of the Golden Elixir realm. How long has it been? The speed of cultivation made Yi Tian feel incredible. Not only Ning Yao, but also Qin Luo, who was beside her and practiced with her under the cover of Xializi's Zen realm, also reached the peak of Jindan realm. On the contrary, the entry of Ear on the other side is far less terrible, but it has also broken through the middle of the Golden Elixir territory. Such a state alone is nothing. I catch a large number of disciples in the Maitreya Palace, but it depends on the cultivation time. Those monks who have reached the later stage or the peak of the Golden Elixir realm are not old monsters who have practiced for more than 100 years. Even if they practice against the sky, they can't condense the Golden Elixir and reach such a realm without 70 or 80 years of hard practice. And Qin Luo, Ear and Ning Yao, their cultivation time is pitifully short. Even if it is the middle level of the Golden Elixir realm, if you put it outside, you can kill all the other friars in a second in terms of cultivation speed. It seems that the cultivation bonus of Zen is really very rebellious. Congratulations to the three beauties. Their accomplishments have broken through again. Yi Tian nodded to Ningyao with a smile and glanced at the other two women at the same time. Brother Yi Tian, you're back. Ear opened her eyes in surprise and looked at Ning Yao next to her, but she didn't rush over immediately. On the other side, Chen Xing just looked at Yi Tian with a smile and didn't say anything. Yi Tian, is the trip to the underworld going well? Ning Yao stood up and asked with concern. A pair of beautiful eyes kept looking at Yi Tian for fear that he might be injured or missing any parts. Yi Tian nodded slightly and said, everything is going well. So far, 2 space passage entrances have been closed in the underworld. Moreover, there are some gains in other aspects. This time, I came here to borrow the fierce soldier's flying sword. Oh. Okay. Ning Yao didn't ask much. She took out the fierce soldier flying sword raised in dantian and handed it to Yi Tian. Yi Tian took over the fierce soldier's flying sword and said, you should continue to practice here. Wait for my good news. Luoshan, Ear and Chen Xing, you can cultivate yourself. Chen Chan is very safe here. You can rest assured. Yi Tian said hello one by one, then turned and left. A moment later, Yi Tian, Yan Yunyang and Mu Rongjuan came to the next fog sea, and also passed through the entrance of the underworld and entered the underworld. At the entrance of this space, Yi Tian also saw the boundless bone house, but different from the previous 2 times, Yi Tian didn't see any meditation here. It seems that the other party has expected to be here and avoided it in advance. Sword Spirit, I want to take a chance to take you into the underworld this time to see if I can sense the smell of broken sword fragments. When the disciples of the Maitreya palace arranged to rob the embers, Yi Tian summoned the Xian dragon flying sword. Master, thank you for remembering this thing. Although you haven't felt anything yet, you can try more. Even if you don't, we've tried our best. I'll go out and look for it myself. Xian Dragon Sword Spirit said that after getting Yi Tian's permission, the cold light disappeared into the dark fog in the distance. A few hours later, Yi Tian searched again after arranging the looting embers here, and then called the fierce soldiers to fly the sword. Unfortunately, during this period of time, the fierce flying sword carefully sensed in a radius of more than 10,000 miles, and did not sense the existence of fragments of the remnant sword. Yi Tian was not in a hurry. He put away the fierce flying sword and returned to Earthstar with Yan Yunyang and Murong Jun, ready to enter the underworld again from the next entrance to the underworld. Originally, it was just a chance to bring fierce soldiers flying swords into the underworld. There was no sign that there were fragments of residual swords in the underworld. Originally, Yi Tian didn't take the fierce soldier flying sword. He thought that the sword could protect Ning Yao. Moreover, the situation in the underworld was unknown. He also felt that he might not have too many opportunities to find the fragments of the remnant sword. But the first time he entered the underworld, his original spirit fire swallowed the underworld flame, and his power became extremely strong, adding a lot to his cards. Moreover, without the threat of the holy fire in the underworld, it is not so easy for Mingxiu to enter the Earth Star. Under the heavy protection of Ning Yao, there will be no problem even without the fierce soldier flying sword. Therefore, Yi Tian Kai had this idea. Next, Yi Tian successively entered the underworld from the other 4 underworld entrances, and arranged to rob embers around each underworld entrance. Perhaps it was because Yi Tian's mountain and river seal and original spiritual fire could not be resisted. There was no Mingxiu in these places. Even if the arrangement was likely to cause heavy damage to the whole underworld, the emperor did not make any sound again. At this time, Yi Tian has stood in another underworld full of white bone houses. This came here through the last entrance to the underworld, which is the space channel in Mabe Fog Sea. Here is also the same as the entrance to the underworld before. There is only the bone house, not the underworld repair. It took a lot of time and finally set up looting embers here. Up to now, so many looting embers have been arranged, but it has only used more than 1,000 looting embers, and there is still a large amount of surplus. How about the sword spirit? Yi Tianxian asked. Master, I still got nothing and found nothing. The voice of Xian Dragon Sword Spirit immediately came into Yi Tian's mind. Yi Tian nodded slightly and looked at the cicada around him. Cicada, do you find anything? The cicada shook her little head and said in a clear voice, I didn't find the smell of big seal as Master said, but I can really feel the smell of wealth. There are many good dark stones there. Okay, show me the way and go there. Although Yi Tian was disappointed, he didn't give up. Then he pulled the cicada with his hand and jumped onto the fierce soldier's flying sword. In this direction. The cicada pointed in one direction, and Tian reached out and called back his life, which was raging wildly in the other direction, into the dantian. Then the fierce soldier flew his sword and flashed away in the distance. Yen Yunyang and Morongjun followed closely. At this time, like other entrances to the underworld, the boundless bone house community has been destroyed by the original spiritual fire. Fierce soldiers' flying swords fly at high speed in the dark fog. Along the way, they see white bones all over the ground, messy. Above is a black world composed of dark chi, while below is a white world composed of boundless white bones. It looks particularly gloomy and terrible. About half an hour later, the scenery in the line of sight changed faintly. In the boundless dark chi, the outline of a huge bone city gradually revealed its signs. As Tian and his party kept approaching, we could see that this city built entirely of white bones was somewhat similar to the city of the Terran. They all have tall walls and spacious streets. All kinds of white bone buildings in the city are high and low. Some look very tall and majestic, while others are much lower. The bone city is so big that you can't see the edge at a glance. If the inhabited area at the entrance of the underworld is a village, then the scale of this bone city is really a real city. There is a great gap between the two. The city of the Ming nationality is so magnificent? Yen Yunyang and Morongjun were very surprised when they looked at the magnificent bone city in front of them. Unexpectedly, Bone City still has a defense field. Looking at a layer of black defense shield that suddenly appeared out of thin air around the city wall, Tian couldn't help muttering. However, these field shields are useless to him. Even the 9 enchanted field can't trap him at all. After all, he has broken such a field himself. Go and break into Bone City. Tian gestured, and there were 5 elements of beads in his hand. Yen Yunyang made the same gesture and held Hoyi's bow in her hand, ready to give the strongest blow at any time. Under the urging of mana, the 5 elements bead sent out a faint halo of about 3 feet. The fierce soldier's flying sword slowly broke through the black shield and entered the city. As soon as the 4 of Tian entered the city, they sensed that countless white lights in the city were exploding here. Tian gestured, and the mountain and river seals already prepared in his hands had been magnified in a flash. When the white light approached the mountain and river seal, it suddenly stopped. At this time, it could be seen that it was bone weapons such as bone gun and bone sword fired by Mingxiu. At the same time, countless spiritual practitioners in the city rose from the white bone buildings and flew into the air. Most of these netherworld practices are white bone netherworld practices, including some golden bone netherworld practices, which are particularly eye-catching in white bone netherworld practices. Mingxiu was so dense that he couldn't see how many there were for a moment, but as soon as he appeared, he retreated one after another. Before he started, he had shown his defeat. Go! Without hesitation, Tian summoned the original spiritual fire and drank loudly. Under the control of the fire spirit, the original spiritual fire immediately turned into a towering flame and swept away to the nether cultivation ahead. Many netherworld practices, whether white bone netherworld practices or golden bone netherworld practices, turn around and fly away quickly. It seems that they already know the power of the original spiritual fire. Kill! At this time, Tian shouted again. More than 2,000 martial spirit puppets he carried were called out and rushed to kill in another direction. Yen Yunyang and Morongjun understood and released their martial spirit puppets to join the battle group. The martial spirit puppet following Tian rushed over. 10,000 martial spirit puppets form an invincible iron stream, wantonly destroying and killing many Mingxiu. Tian no longer cares about the battle groups in these 2 aspects, but drives the mountain and river seal to kill in the city. All Mingxiu also fled one after another, but some Mingxiu who escaped slowly lost the qualification to escape forever. Yen Yunyang and Morongjun shot at the same time. Wherever their magic power reached, no matter what level of meditation, they all disappeared. Master, I feel the breath of those treasures moving. When Tian rushed to kill in the direction of the cicada's fingerprints, he suddenly heard the cicada around him pointing in a certain direction again and saying, moving in this direction. Tian Shenian has locked the direction pointed by the cicada. At this time, he has found that in the white bone hall pointed by the cicada, 5 golden bone ghosts came out from the inside and flew away in the distance. Chase! Yi Tian immediately shouted, turned around and quickly chased the 5 Jingu Mingxiu. The breath of the treasures can move, which only means that the treasures have been taken away by the 5 golden bone nether practitioners. Will Yi Tian let those Mingxiu go? His word chase had just been exported, and Yan Yunyang and Morongjun had disappeared from their original place in a flash. After entering the underworld several times, both of them didn't make a big move. One reason is that Yi Tian intended to rob the embers and didn't pursue Mingxiu on a large scale. The other is that Yi Tian's original spiritual fire is too powerful and there is no chance for them to make a move at all. At this time, it happened that Yan Yunyang and Morongjun would not have been out of the fighter plane. When the 2 strong players in Yupu territory shot, Yi Tian didn't catch up with the 5 Jingu Mingxiu in person, but drove the fierce soldier flying sword to fly to the position of the martial soul puppet. There are the most intensive netherworld practices. Yi Tian Gang wants to kill more netherworld practices during this time period. Wherever Shan Hasil goes, he suppresses a large number of Mingxiu. Yi Tian doesn't have to do it himself. He just needs to drive Shan Hasil. The fierce soldier's flying sword just flashes, and a large number of suppressed Mingxiu are killed. Before long, when Yi Tian was killing Mingxiu wantonly, Morongjun and Yan Yunyang appeared around him again in a flash. The palace master has killed the 5 golden bone Mingxiu, and the bones have been included in Shumi Ring. Yan Yunyang nodded to Yi Tian. All the 5 golden bone Mingxiu are equivalent to the accomplishments of the great friars in the Terran Yupu territory. If Ho Yi's Bao is not used, I'm afraid I can't return with all my skills this time. Do you feel it? Yi Tian also nodded slightly and turned to ask the cicada around him. Yes, I feel it. The smell of the treasure is on the 2 elders, the cicada said excitedly with her mind sideways. That's right. The bones are put in your place first, and now they are arranged to rob the embers. Yi Tian nodded again and said to Yan Yunyang and Morongjun. Knowing this, Yan Yunyang and Morongjun immediately released the magic weapon cave and summoned 2,000 elite disciples from the Mithraea palace. 1661 There was no figure of Mingxiu within 100 miles nearby. Many disciples of the Mithraea palace scattered around and poured the looted embers into the Bone City. Yi Tian wanted to use these looted embers to destroy the ancient city. With the spreading of looted embers, Yi Tian led the people to go deep into the center of the city, and a large number of looted embers were scattered into the Bone City along the way, making the city completely constructed of white bones full of looted embers everywhere. Go! A moment later, when Yi Tian saw that the number of looted embers was enough to destroy the Bone City, he shouted and flew across the city to the distance. In addition to the countless bones left in the city, there is no figure of Mingxiu outside the city. Jinling, do you feel anything? Cicada, did you find anything? During the flight, Yi Tian asked continuously. Now he has no specific place to go. In addition to setting up looting embers in the big city of the underworld and killing Mingxiu as much as possible, the main task is to find the real mountain and river seal. If you are lucky, you may get the news of the broken sword fragments. Master, I haven't sensed the fragments of the remnant sword for the time being. The sword spirit immediately replied. Master, I have a vague feeling in this direction, but it's not very real. The cicada pointed in a certain direction with its small head on its side. Yi Tian's heart moved. He immediately controlled the fierce flying sword and flew away quickly according to the instructions of the cicada. While flying away, he observed the change of the cicada's look. But the cicada is always with its head on its side and feels with all its strength. This situation lasted for more than an hour. The cicada never said a word, and Yi Tian didn't ask much. He knew very well that if the cicada could clarify something, he would tell himself at the first time. Master, I sensed the fragments of the remnant sword. After a while, the voice of Jinling's extreme excitement suddenly rang out in Yi Tian's mind. In what direction? Yi Tian was overjoyed when he heard the speech. Generally speaking, the feeling of sword spirit will not be wrong, and every time the fierce flying sword integrates fragments, it will have a qualitative leap. Just keep flying in this direction. The specific example is still uncertain, but I feel it clearly. Jianling immediately replied. Okay, speed up. Yi Tian's heart is even more happy. Since he has the best of both worlds in this direction, the things of Cicada and Jianling will not be delayed. The speed of fierce soldiers' flying swords is faster and faster. Even Yi Tianxin feels the joy of Ziyun Dragon Sword Spirit. Master, I feel more and more clearly. Yes, it's in this direction. A moment later, the cicada said with a happy face. Okay. Yi Tian nodded slightly, released his mind and tried to feel the situation ahead. He had a hunch in his heart that maybe the mountain and river seal smell mentioned by the cicada was probably in the same position as the fragments of the remnant sword sensed by the purple cloud dragon sword spirit. He is not familiar with the underworld. Although he doesn't know where the destination is, he dares to break into even the dragon's pool and tiger's den with his current strength. Yi Tian, your time of death is coming. After drinking tea, the ethereal voice suddenly sounded in the dark air. Play tricks. Have the courage to show up. You wants to see what means you have? Although Yi Tianko said so, he was alert in his heart, and the mountain and river seal in his hand was ready to sacrifice at any time. Even Morong Jun and Yin Yunyan were suddenly shocked. They opened their minds, looked around, took precautions carefully, and were ready to take action at any time. After a few strange smiles, the voice was silent and didn't say anything more. Imaginary attacks and anomalies did not appear. The fierce soldier's flying sword continued to fly forward quickly. After a long time, Yi Tian, who was flying, suddenly frowned and showed a thoughtful look. Within the sensing range of the divine mind, there are countless meditation practitioners gathered around a tall white bone building, all of whom are kneeling and crawling towards the building. The building is so large that it has a radius of several miles. Its base is octagonal. It gradually shrinks from floor to floor. The height of each floor is about 2 meters. It has 9 floors. It looks like a bone tower completely made of white bones from a distance. But the shape of the bone tower is a little strange. There is no sharp top on it, but a wide platform. On the platform, there is something like a bone bed or a white bone table. On top of it, there is a tall white bone meditation. That Mingxiu was very tall and lay motionless like a giant, like a dead body. What's more strange is that the 3 incense burners made of white bones were placed in front of the white bone Ming self-cultivation. Each incense burner was shrouded in smoke with 3 columns of incense inserted in it. Is this the white bone altar? With the distance getting closer, the situation over there became more and more clear. Yi Tian suddenly remembered the white bone altar he had seen. It was similar to the white bone building in front in both appearance and detail. While Yi Tian was flying, he suddenly found that the white bone Mingxiu on the bone bed sat up slowly, hard and inflexible, like a puppet. Then, the white bone Mingxiu sat up instead and stood up. When Bai Gu Mingxiu stood up, suddenly a dark soul flew from a distance and disappeared in Bai Gu Mingxiu's body. Then, 2 flames suddenly lit up in the 2 dark sockets of the white bone Mingxiu. At this time, Yi Tian finally understood that the white bone meditation on the bone bed was not a real white bone meditation, but a skeleton attached to the bone. And the flying soul body is a complete meditation only after it enters the skeleton. When Yi Tian guessed, he was getting closer and closer to the white bone altar, but then Yi Tian's fierce sword flying speed began to slow down suddenly, and his eyebrows could not help wrinkling. Within the sensing range of mind, the white bone Mingxiu who had just stood up suddenly had 2 dark souls flying from different directions and successively flew into Mingxiu's body. The 2 flames in Mingxiu's eye socket became brighter and brighter. Is this 1 body and 3 souls? When Yi Tian guessed, he suddenly shook his body, and a dark shadow suddenly flew out from his side, and the electric jet generally flew towards the white bone altar in the distance. In this case, Yi Tian's face changed, and the mountain and river seal in his hand magnified in an instant. Almost at the same time, more than a dozen thunder fell from the sky and split into the dark shadow. Unfortunately, the speed of the dark shadow was too fast. In the blink of an eye, it had flown to the white bone altar and entered the tall white bone Ming cultivation body. Even the mountain and river seal and thunder could not affect it. Palace leader, how could that soul body hide on you, and we didn't find it? It's really amazing. Seeing such a situation, Morong Jun said with a changed look. Even Yan Yunyang's expression became dignified. Not only Morong Jun didn't notice the soul, but so did she. Yi Tian's face became more and more dignified and didn't say anything, but his mind quickly penetrated into Shumi Ring. Sure enough, as he guessed, he was sure that the shadow came from the Grimace mask. In the Shumi Ring at this time, the ghost mask has been broken piece by piece, no longer the original complete shape, turned into countless debris and lay in the Shumi Ring. Naturally, the dark soul that flew away should be the powerful ghost suppressed by Huashu at the beginning. This situation makes Yi Tian a little nervous. It is already clear that all the roots of the chain should come from the white bone altar and the skeleton attached to the altar. It must be some mysterious force from the altar that broke the seal on the ghost face mask and released the powerful soul inside. However, what happened when the other three dark souls entered the attached bone together? Yi Tian was the first to see that multiple souls share the same skeleton. While Yi Tian was meditating, he suddenly saw that after the soul flying out of himself entered the skeleton-attached bone, the dark fire in the eye socket of the attached bone lit up again and gave out a dazzling light. Almost at any time, another shadow flew from different directions and rushed into the skeleton. 5 souls. Yan Yunyang's face showed surprise, and she couldn't help muttering that Mingxiu set up the altar so loudly, which was obviously a great hope for the skeleton and bone possessed by the 5 souls. Even Yi Tian's face showed a dignified color. After all, he was most aware of the horror of the soul sealed by the ghost mask. Now, this soul only supports the same skeleton with the other 4 souls. It can be seen that the 4 souls must be very extraordinary. No, it's swallowing other souls. Morong Jun on one side suddenly exclaimed. Needless to say, Yi Tian and Yan Yunyang naturally saw the situation on the altar. They saw countless black souls suddenly appear out of thin air. The skeleton's attached bone opened its big mouth with only 2 rows of teeth, sucking the dense soul into the attached bone. Cicada, where is the big seal you sensed? Yi Tian stared at the skeleton and bone swallowing countless black souls. At the same time, he motioned. The mountain and river seals around 100 mu quickly flew towards the white bone altar with the roaring wind. It's on the Mingxiu who has the brightest skeleton flame over there. When the cicada heard, she looked at a tall white bone Mingxiu in front of the white bone altar. When Yi Tian got the message he wanted, he quickly released a magic weapon cave and sent the cicada in. After putting away the magic weapon in the cave again, Yi Tian said to Yan Yunyang and Morongjun, and then flew to the white bone altar. Almost at the same time, he released his original spiritual fire again. In the sight, the mountain and river seal has been flying on the altar. Some white bone Mingxiu nearby have no intention of being affected by the mountain and river seal and lost the ability to move. However, the skeleton-attached bone controlled by 5 souls at the same time has become slower, but from the current situation, the influence of the mountain and river seal on it is not as powerful as expected. This skeleton is a strong enemy. However, this weak influence was only a matter of a moment. Then Mingxiu didn't know what means he used, and then he regained his freedom. It seemed that Shanhian could no longer have any influence on him. Yi Tian murmured, his mind moved, and urged the original spirit fire to rush at the skeleton. At this time, there was action on the other side of Mingxiu. Countless Mingxiu outside the mountain and river seal rushed towards Yi Tian one after another. It seemed that who knew it was not Yi Tian's opponent and rushed to die. These practitioners are trying to buy time for the skeleton to engulf the soul. It should be the time to engulf the soul. They can't live without the white bone altar. Yi Tian stared at the countless Mingxiu who swarmed over and said in a deep voice. Although he said something, his hand was not slow at all. More than 2,000 martial spirit puppets immediately appeared out of thin air and met the Mingxiu who rushed up. Yan Yunyang and Morongjun were not slow at all. They gestured continuously. A large number of martial spirit puppets were called out, and all their bodies flashed to join the battle group. However, no one noticed that in this chaos, Yan Yunyang and Morongjun suddenly disappeared into the dense martial soul puppets. At this time, on the altar, Yi Tian has called back the mountain and river seal and assisted the Wulin puppet to kill Mingxiu nearby. His original spiritual fire has begun to attack the skeleton-possessed bone controlled by the 5 soul bodies. The surging flame of the original spiritual fire is very terrible, as if it can devour all things in the world, emitting a high temperature that makes many nether practitioners tremble. However, in front of the skeleton-attached bone controlled by the 5 soul bodies, it seems to encounter an invisible barrier, which can't get close to the skeleton-attached bone within 3 feet of the body.
Ah, Tian, I really want to thank you this time.
If you hadn't sent the ghost of the ghost god, we in the underworld wouldn't be able to reunite the soul of the ghost god and be reborn.
Ha ha ha.
The ethereal voice came again from the sky.
Is your great seal magic weapon invalid? Is the spirit fire invalid?
I can tell you without reservation, Tian, everything you rely on will be invalid. When the soul of the underworld is completely restored, it will be the destruction of your Mithraea palace and even the whole Earth star, haha. The more the voice said, the more arrogant it became. The tone of these words was great, but Tian could sense that the 5 soul bodies were slowly condensing in the skeleton attached to the bone, and there was a great tendency to combine into one soul body. The 5 soul bodies swallowed a large number of soul bodies, and their own breath was also rising a little. If you really allow the soul of the god to recover completely, Tian believes that the existing means of the Mithraea palace may not be able to kill the skeleton. Although he had realized that the situation was very serious, his face was a careless expression. Old ghost, you hiding an exposed guy, you waited.
Did you really think he had these means?
Without a cup of tea, it would be a complete joke to reunite the ghost and soul.
The Emperor will wait and see, ha ha ha.
The voice laughed disapprovingly.
Look at Ye's means?
With a hum, Yi Tianling called back the original spiritual fire that had made no progress and began to frantically burn other Mingxiu, but the Millennium Peach with Thunder Sword appeared in his hand. With the urging of mana, a terrible thunder appeared out of thin air and blasted at the skeleton that was swallowing the soul.
Boom!
A huge noise came out, and the thunder struck the skeleton bones impartially. However, when the thunder dissipated, the skeleton bones were intact. When the powerful thunder killed some souls next to the skeleton bones.
Ha ha! Tian, you are a joke.
In the sky, the ethereal voice came again, full of ridicule and disdain.
Boom!
At this time, tens of miles away from the altar, a sky-shaking sound suddenly came. At the place where the sound came out, a tall white bone Mingxiu suddenly broke into more than a dozen broken bones and flew around in the explosion of the airbar. Among the scattered broken bones, a black soul staggered to the distance, which seemed to be badly hurt. Other nether practitioners there immediately swarmed away to protect the hurried soul. The scattered broken bones, like being subjected to some strong suction, suddenly converge in a certain direction, and then disappear into invisibility.
Palace Master, you have succeeded.
Almost at the same time, Yen Yunyang and Murangjun appeared around Tian at the same time.
Murangjun gestured, took out 2 thick leg bones and sent them to Tian. Tian took the leg bones and quickly branded one of them with soul thoughts, and then Xinyan went into it. When he saw something inside, Tian couldn't help showing an expression of ecstasy on his face.
The next moment, his gesture moved, and there was a golden square seal in his hand, which was wrapped with a simple and vicissitudes of life and engraved with many profound and complex symbols. On the side of the print, 3 plum blossom seal characters are engraved, mountain and river seal.
Yes, it's the mountain and river seal Tian is looking for.
The tall Mingxiu, whose skeleton was destroyed, was the emperor who made an ethereal sound. All Tian's previous actions, all the boastful force, and even using the Millennium Mahogany Thunder Sword to attack the skeleton and bones are just bluff to cover the attack on the emperor. Just when Tian released his mountain and river seal, the Hades had quickly fled to the distance, and thousands of other Hades were hiding with him. Because there are thousands of meditation as a cover, he is not very conspicuous among them.
With his voice alone, the Emperor of the Underworld has absolute self-confidence. Tian can't lock his position with his voice.
Instead, he avoids the mountain and river seal, not afraid to expose his whereabouts and identity, but just worried about being injured by mistake as an ordinary white bone ghost. After all, although his current cultivation is far better than other ordinary meditation, he is not sure that he can retreat with his whole body under the terrorist suppression of Shanhian. After quitting for decades, there were many nether practitioners around him, and those nether practitioners did not show the appearance of taking him as the leader. Therefore, although they later found that Murongjun and Yen Yunyang disappeared,
they just thought that the two great monks in Yupu territory were to be invisible to deal with the powerful nether gods after the reunion of souls. I didn't expect to deal with myself. Because he had no idea that he was exposed. According to his idea, it is impossible to be exposed by making those ethereal sounds.
In fact, it is true that Yi Tian can find the Emperor Ming and lock his whereabouts. It is really not because of the sound. But the Emperor of the Underworld could not imagine that the little girl around Yi Tian, who looked harmless to humans and animals, and even some strange elves, could lock her position only by sensing the mountain and river seal. This way of exposure was unexpected to him. In order not to make the Emperor's storage ossified into powder, so as to lose the mountain and river seal, according to Yi Tian's instructions, Yan Yunyang didn't use all her strength when launching Hou-Yi arrow, which is also the reason why the Emperor's soul can escape alive. The death or life of Emperor Ming has nothing to do with the overall situation. It does not affect Yi Tian's killing of Mingxiu.
Now, it is worth Yi Tian's attention that there is only this ghost god in the whole underworld.
Shoot!
Yi Tian said to Yan Yunyang as he quickly stamped his soul on the mountain and river imprint. The reason why he didn't ask Yan Yunyang to use Hou-Yi's Bao to fight the ghost-attached bones of the soul reunion from the beginning was that he was not sure that Hou-Yi's Bao could kill the skeleton-attached bones of the ghost in Yan Yunyang's hand. On the other hand, who doesn't want to frighten the Emperor because of the use of Hou-Yi's Bao? In Yi Tian's action plan, obtaining the mountain and river seal is the first, while the skeleton of the god of killing the underworld is the second. If Hou-Yi's Bao can destroy the skeleton and bones of the god of the underworld, it can still be destroyed after getting the mountain and river seal. If Hou-Yi Gong can't do anything, he won't waste the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kill the Emperor because of this small chance. The time difference between the two targets is just a few breath time, and the soul swallowed by the skeleton of the nether god is also extremely limited.
Yan Yunyang got Yi Tian's instruction.
This time, she tried her best to open Hou-Yi's Bao, and then made a buzzing sound. The Bao body of Hou-Yi's Bao sent out a black light, and the Hou-Yi arrow on the string turned into a black light, and with the power of destroying everything, she shot at the skeleton of the ghost. However, no one could have imagined that such a powerful and rapid Hou-Yi arrow was about to shoot at the ghost-attached bone. Its strength suddenly slowed down, and then it was held in the hand by the skeleton palm of the skeleton attached to the backbone of the ghost-attached bone. Although under the powerful power of Hou-Yi's Bao, the skeleton of the ghost god was driven to stagger back for a few steps, finally stabilized his body and stopped again.
There are only 3 Hou-Yi arrows. Now one of them has been lost. Yi Tian didn't hesitate too much. He shouted again, "Shoot again!" Yan Yunyang got the order, and a Hou-Yi arrow appeared in her hand again.
She took the arrow on the string and shot again at the skeleton of the ghost.
"Shoot again!"
Without waiting for the result of this Hou-Yi arrow, Yi Tian drank immediately after the second Hou-Yi arrow was shot.
This time, Yan Yunyang also took the arrow and pulled the bow without hesitation.
Hou-Yi's arrow turned into a black light and shot at the skeleton of the god of the underworld again. The two Hou-Yi arrows were almost one in front and one behind, and shot at each other at the same time. However, the ghost's flesh and bones seemed to be fearless. It grabbed another dry skeleton hand bone. When the second Hou-Yi arrow slowed down, it also caught the arrow in its hand.
Without exception, Hou-Yi's Bao is an immortal weapon.
Although Yan Yunyang can only play the power of this Bao in one step, she still led the skeleton of the god to stagger back a few steps. At this time, the third arrow had been shot, and the skeleton of the ghost god suddenly made a sad cry and motioned. Dozens of nearby Mingxiu were summoned by it and blocked in front of Hou-Yi's arrow. Boom! With a loud noise, dozens of Mingxiu burst open under the threat of a terrible arrow, turning into countless broken bones and splashing everywhere. And the Hou-Yi arrow also exhausted her power because of these dark cultivation obstacles, and was called back by Yan Yunyang. At this time, because she fired 3 Hou-Yi arrows in a row, she had little mana left and had to take a pill to quickly restore mana.
Yi Tian, it's useless. You accept your fate. See if the Emperor won't tear you up.
The ethereal voice of Hades sounded again in the sky, but this time, its voice seemed very weak.
Useless? Yi Tian sneered.
A golden seal in his hand had flown out of thin air and turned into 100 feet and flew to the altar.
Is it useful to carve insects? Do you think?
In the sky, the voice of Hades laughed. But before he finished, his voice suddenly stopped and swallowed back. I saw that under the suppression of this golden seal, the ghost skeleton with extremely terrible strength was contrary to the previous normal.
It was like being stuck in the mud. It became extremely slow and difficult. How can it be? The real mountain river seal has such power?
In the sky, the voice of Emperor Ming was very frightened. Mingxiu can't drive the magic weapon of the Terran, because the nature of skill and mana is different, so that the whole Emperor only knows that the mountain and river seal is very powerful, but he has never seen the power of the real mountain and river seal. In his mind, it should be roughly the same as Yi Tian's mountain and river seal. After all, the shape and color of the two are not much different. However, unexpectedly, under some comparison, he found that he was very wrong. Compared with the real mountain and river seal, Yi Tian's Fangshan river seal is really a small witch. The mountain and river seal town pressed the attached bone of the ghost god. The next moment, the seal suddenly sank down and hit the attached bone of the skeleton of the ghost god. The huge mountain and river seal was extremely heavy, but it fell on the skeleton of the god of the underworld in an instant, and then fell on the tall white bone altar.
A loud bang.
The white bone altar collapsed. Then, under the suppression of mountain and river seals, they sank in the white bone earth. But in a moment, the skeleton of the ghost god was gone, and the white bone altar was gone. Instead, above the white bone altar, the golden mountain and river seal was deeply smashed on the white bone enemy. In such a situation, those dark practitioners scattered with a bang and began to run around.
Even the emperor did not make a sound. Yi Tian didn't pay attention to those escaping meditation. The low-level meditation did not pose any threat to himself.
Now the only focus is the skeleton of the nether god.
Recognize the Lord. He was not in a hurry to lift the mountain and river seal and look at the situation below.
Instead, he took out the Millennium Peach Tree Thundersword and threw it to Morong Jun.
When Morong Jun quickly recognized the Lord, Yi Tian looked at Yen Yunyang. How's the mana recovery?
Palace leader, you have recovered some, and you can send an arrow with all your strength.
Yen Yunyang held the only remaining arrow. Hui nodded slightly and said, "That's good. Get ready. Don't let the ghost get away. Don't be careless." Yi Tianing nodded heavily and reminded.
He knew the power of the ghost mask best. Once he wore the ghost mask, he could improve the cultivation of the three great realms out of thin air. He also used the magic power of the ghost mask to kill strong enemies many times, and even Qing'anzi, who had reached the Heaven Palace, was not spared. From the bottom of his heart, so far, Yi Tian doesn't know to what extent the ghost of Hades is terrible. When he believed that the terrorist force with the soul of the ghost would never be easily hit by the mountain and river seal. After Morong Jun recognized the Millennium Peach Tree Thunder Sword as the Lord, Yi Tian gestured and sent out the original spiritual fire again. He was ready near the mountain and river seal to attack the skeleton and bones of the dark god at any time. Then, Yi Tian gestured, and the mountain and river seal deep into the white bone earth rose slowly. Under the cover of God's thoughts, Yi Tian suddenly saw that the attached bones of the body of the dark god had been broken into several pieces, which was completely destroyed. But the soul of the nether god has been integrated by 5 souls and turned into a black soul body. After the mountain and river seal was raised, the black soul suddenly gave a sharp howl.
Mind attack!
Yi Tian shouted loudly and mobilized his own mind to stop the terrible howling. Almost at the same time, the mountain and river seal flew up, and the original spiritual fire swept over, enveloping the soul of the dark god. Almost at the same time, the Millennium Peach with Thunder Sword in Morong Jun's hand, which could resist the attack of the ghost spirit, burst out a powerful thunder and shot at the ghost spirit body in the original spirit fire. Yen Yunyang also bent her bow and arrow, barely filled Hui's bow and shot a terrible sword.
Yi Tian also made continuous gestures.
The Thunder Taoist dart burst out, and the terrible force of thunder fell down.
Fortunately, Yen Yunyang and Morongjun took the elixir refined by Yi Tian to enhance their mind, which made their mind increase greatly. Otherwise, I'm afraid they can't resist a mind attack sent by the ghost just reunited.
They were shocked by this, and were really very cautious about the soul of the ghost. Whether it's fire or thunder, even the Hui Bao and Yin Yunyang's hand has strong lethality to the soul.
What's more, the three joined hands and launched a terrorist attack on the ghost soul method just reunited.
In the light of the fire, the ghost soul gradually weakened. After several fatal attacks, it exploded with a bang and turned into wisps of smoke, which dissipated in the raging flame.
Until then, Tian-san took a long breath.
If you didn't get the real mountain and river seal, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy to subdue the ghost who reunited with the soul. Even Tian can't accurately judge the extent to which the soul of the nether god will become stronger and stronger under the action of the altar.
But now, it's all over.
Before the soul of the underworld did not really grow, it had completely disappeared. Tian made a gesture and narrowed the real mountain and river seal. He looked carefully in his hand. So far, he hasn't seen the seal too carefully. Yin Yunyang, however, stretched out her hand in fear of the bones underground and took back the two Hou-Yi arrows. Immortal tools like Hou-Yi's arrow, wrapped in white bones, can't be damaged by the smashing force of mountain and river seal.
Good print.
Tian played with the mountain and river seal, then pondered a little, erased his own mountain and river seal, and threw it at Morong Jun, recognized the lord and use it temporarily.
Yes, Palace Master.
Morong Jun was delighted when he heard the speech, and the result was the mountain and river seal of Tian. Although there is still a lot of gap between this magic weapon and the real mountain and river seal, in Morong Jun's eyes, this Fangshan and river seal is almost invincible. With this seal in hand, in addition to strong people like the Dark God, even the great energy in the Heavenly Palace have to retreat.
Next, go and kill the Ghost Emperor.
After Morong Jun recognized the mountain and river seal as the Lord, Tian said decisively. Yin Yunyang and Morong Jun looked at each other, and then both disappeared from where they were. At this level of cultivation, it is unimaginable that these great monks in the Jade and Pu realm have a deep mind. Since the ghost of the Emperor Ming escaped, Yin Yunyang and Morong Jun locked the ghost of the Emperor Ming. Where did the other party escape, what kind of skeleton and bone they replaced, and where they are now, they are always in charge. Now, one of them has a Hou-Yi Bao and the other has an imitation mountain and river seal.
It's nothing to win this man.
After they left for more than 10 minutes, they both appeared in front of Tian again. The palace leader has killed the emperor of the underworld, and the soul has completely disappeared.
I think the underworld should be a complete failure. Do you want to continue to kill the emperor of the underworld? Morong Jun said confidently.
At this time, Tianjin was holding two broken sword bodies in his hand, as if thinking about something. Hearing Morong Jun's words, he waved his hand slightly. Don't worry, now there are looting embers at this altar.
Look, the white bone altar is not new.
The underworld chose to build the white bone altar here. No matter what's special here or not, it can't let Mingxiu continue to use it and repair the white bone altar again.
Morong Jun and Yin Yunyang were deeply convinced when they heard the speech.
They were not afraid of 10,000, just in case. It didn't take much effort. The two released 2,000 elite disciples of the Maitreya Palace and began to sow looting embers within the surrounding 100 mu area.
No matter whether there is something special here or not, I believe these looted embers will also become a trouble in the underworld.
This side began to get busy, but Tian came to a place with strong dark chi hundreds of miles away with his more than 2,000 martial spirit puppets. Under the heavy protection of more than 2,000 martial spirit puppets, Tian released a magic weapon cave. As soon as he dodged into it, he began to melt the two pieces of magic weapon fragments of Fierce Soldier's flying sword into Fierce Soldier's flying sword. These two fragments of the remnant sword were naturally obtained from the killed Emperor Ming.
The Ming Qi here is much purer than that of the Earth Star.
Tian took this opportunity to start refining the Fierce Soldier flying sword again. For him, the stronger the power of Fierce Soldier's flying swords, the more assured he is of Ningyao's safety.
This sword is Ningyao's amulet. Time passed bit by bit.
About half a day later, Tian, with an excited face, came out of the magic weapon cave. The fierce flying sword in his hand has taken on a new look, which is very different from before. Without Tian's driving, the breath emitted by this sword also makes people feel very scared.
Go. Absorb the dark qi. Tian looked around, then relaxed his hand and said.
The fierce soldier's flying sword made a buzzing sound, and the sword light disappeared from Yi Tian. A moment later, thousands of miles away, a huge dark gas vortex was surging and forming, stirring the pure dark gas around thousands of miles and gathering there. Finally, a whirlpool of thousands of miles in size was formed, which was swallowed up by the purple cloud dragon sword spirit in the fierce soldier's flying sword. After another half-day or so, the dark air vortex began to slowly decrease and finally disappeared. Everything there slowly returned to normal, but you can see that the dark chi around is filling there. From this, we can see how terrible the amount of dark chi consumed by the soul of Xian Dragon Sword is. Master, my memory has been completely restored, and I finally remember how the sword was damaged. The next moment, the fierce soldier's flying sword flashed back to Yi Tian again, and a sense came to Yi Tian.
After this re-refining, the sword can move as quickly as the Great Friar in Yupu territory.
It was when the Sui Huang once fought with a powerful Ming Xiu. That Ming Xiu had a name called the Ming God, but the attached bone was different from this. The Ming God used a powerful magic power to break the Xian divine sword, but the soul was also cut into 9 sections by the Ming God.
4 of them were killed by the Sui Huang, while the other 5 have no impression.
Now it seems that they were killed by the master before the 5 souls that were killed.
Jianling recalled generally.
So it seems that this ghost is really a powerful role. The 5 remnant spirits have such strength, and they have just gathered together, and they are not fully integrated. If it is the horror of their strength in the heyday of that year, it may kill all the great friars in the heavenly palace.
That is to say, it is an existence beyond the heavenly palace, which is really amazing. Think.
Yi Tian murmured in his mouth, but he also had some luck in his heart. If he didn't just enter the underworld and just break the underworld god who was condensing his soul, once he let the other party succeed in condensing his soul on the white bone altar, he must be a very terrible enemy. Even without the ghost in the ghost mask, it is not so easy to deal with. It seems that it is a very correct choice to enter the underworld this time. Next, he asked the Xian Dragon Sword Soul about the Sui Emperor. The Xian Dragon Sword Soul in this art has been fully integrated, and his cultivation has been restored to level 7, that is, the level of Yupu territory. It is only a matter of time to restore to level 8.
For Yi Tian's question, Xian Dragon Sword Soul is a detailed answer.
After a long time, Yi Tian stopped. The real generation of Tianjiu was born with infinite admiration for his chief master, Sui Huang. He not only had amazing strength, but also took the outside world of the heavens as his own responsibility and combined all forces with his own strength to protect the peace of the human race in the world of the heavens.
It's time to take over the flag in Master's hand.
At this moment, Yi Tian made up his mind and tried his best to continue Master's unfinished mission. Apart from some things about the Sui Huang Emperor, there's nothing else to worry about.
Xian Dragon Sword Soul doesn't know much about immortal tracks. Simply, Yi Tian stopped asking. He motioned and took out 2 pills from Shumi ring and held them in his palm.
Seeing these 2 pills, the fierce soldier's flying sword suddenly lit up and made a buzzing sound. It can be seen that the soul of Xianlong's sword was extremely excited.
Absorb it, Yi Tian whispered. The fierce soldier's flying sword tip dropped slightly, as if nodding.
Then the sword tip touched one of the pills. I saw that the pill was shrinking rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and finally completely disappeared from Yi Tian's hands, leaving no trace of impurities. Next, the tip of the fierce soldier's flying sword touched another pill again. Like the previous pill, this pill was also quickly absorbed by the fierce soldier's flying sword.
The momentum emitted by the fierce soldier flying sword after absorbing the 2 pills is obviously very different from that before.
Even if it is suspended there and does not move, it also emits a shivering chill, as if the power to destroy everything will erupt in the next moment.
How? I only have these 2 pills on me.
If I need time to continue refining later, Yi Tian said with a smile, sensing the change of fierce soldiers' flying swords.
Thank you, Master.
Now the medicine has not been fully absorbed, but only a small part has been stored in the sword. When the stored medicine is absorbed, the strength will naturally return to its peak. If you continue to absorb the power of pills at that time, you can naturally improve, but it's not urgent.
The Master is busy. I'll find the Master to refine it when necessary. Xianlong Jianling said excitedly. Well, it's just that my ice lotus needs some time to recover. When it's all recovered, refine the next batch of pills. There are many people who need to take pills. Next, the Maitreya Palace is mainly to build the power of the Heavenly Palace. Not only the disciples of the Maitreya Palace want to build it, but also the Ziyun Dragon Sword Spirit. You will do his best to make you a higher level and become a demon fairy. Yi Tian nodded slightly. Xialong, thank you for your master. The fierce soldier flying sword suspended in the air pointed a few points again. Yi Tian gently waved his hand and looked at Yen Yunyang and Morongjun. Next, there should be no too strong Ming repair. Morongjun, you and Yen Yunyang take some people to arrange the looting embers in the big city of the underworld, and I also take some people to arrange them separately. It is limited to 3 days. After 3 days, meet at the entrance of the underworld in Mabe. Morongjun now has an imitation mountain and river seal in her hand, while Yen Yunyang has a Hoi Bao in her hand. When they are combined together, Yi Tian is naturally very relieved. And he himself has this positive mountain and river seal, and now this fierce soldier flying sword with soaring strength, coupled with the original spirit fire. The underworld is so big that he can't go anywhere. Yen Yunyang and Morongjun naturally have no opinion. In their hearts, Yi Tian always has the powerful magic power handed down by the Flint Emperor, because it may cost a lot. Yi Tian won't show it easily unless he has to. This kind of thought is deep-rooted. After all, they have witnessed Yi Tian's killing King Ganzi, a powerful man in the Heavenly Palace. There is no doubt that seeing is believing. Where did they think that the means Yi Tian relied on to improve his strength and give play to his powerful magic power was a ghost mask? Now the ghost mask has been fragmented, and even the ghost soul inside has been destroyed. At present, the group of soldiers were divided into 2 groups, each group led 1,000 elite disciples of the Maitreya Palace to destroy the Ming practice and sow the ashes. Time passed bit by bit. 3 days later, in the fog sea of Mabe, a circle of light suddenly appeared on the shield of the heaven prisoner field covering the entrance of the underworld. In the halo, Yi Tian, Morongjun and Yen Yunyang came out. Palace Master, 2 masters. When the 2 disciples of the Maitreya Palace on duty saw Yi Tian and others appear, they immediately saluted respectfully. Okay, you can withdraw. There's no need to be on duty here. Yi Tian glanced around and saw a magic weapon cave nearby. 2 disciples in the magic weapon cave came out, and he said immediately. Obviously, there are 4 disciples on duty here, changing in 2 or 2 turns. If Mingxiu comes again, one of the disciples hesitated. Of course, it's better not to be on duty here, but he's still worried about the underworld. Yi Tian smiled and said, Don't worry. This time we enter the underworld and have beaten the underworld. If we have enough time, we can easily destroy the underworld. Now the underworld can only pray that we don't go to their trouble and dare to strike the Earth Star again. Besides, how can the powerful Huafan stone and field be broken by the current underworld? I see. We're going back to Zongmen. The disciples agreed excitedly and began to prepare. Yi Tian naturally won't wait for them. He took Morongjun and Yen Yunyang to fly away from the fog sea. He took the lead in looking at the death side. Everything was normal. There was no movement in the demon world. Shenron always stays here and cultivates in the magic weapon cave in the field for 5 times, so that the martial soul puppet can monitor the movement of the eye of the demon world all the time. Occasionally, he goes out for a tour. Here, you don't need to spend too much energy, but it's a good place for cultivation. Yi Tian didn't send others to take turns. Since there was no movement in the demon world, Yi Tian was so happy. He has just experienced a battle in the underworld, and he just needs a period of time to recuperate. The most important thing is to use this period of time to improve the overall strength of the Maitreya Palace. After all, in Yi Tian's opinion, the strength of the demon world must be much stronger than that of the underworld, otherwise the Sui Emperor would not be trapped in the demon world. Next, Yi Tian inspected several fog seas. Withdraw all the people stationed near the fog sea and move them to the periphery of Death Valley, where they can use the magic weapon of the field for 5 times to cultivate in the cave. Even the field division that is arranging the field is withdrawn by Yi Tian.
So far, the field division has only arranged a field of fog sea to absorb a large amount of dark gas. It will take some time to complete the layout of the remaining 6 fog seas. But one task is more urgent, that is to test the field that Morong Chuchu said to turn the dark stone into fairy jade. If it is successful, it will undoubtedly play a great role in the war that may come in the near future. After all, the number of Wuhuan puppets has reached as many as 60,000 or 70,000. Although Yi Tian has many top-grade fairy jade, it is still very stressful to rely on these fairy jade to support the long-term operation of Wuhuan puppets. If you can successfully turn the dark stone into a fairy jade, or even turn the best dark stone into a best fairy jade, it will be an overwhelming joy for the Mithraea Palace. Yi Tianxian arranged the site in the newly vacated open space on the west side of Feilai Peak in the Mithraea Palace. When Tiangong Branch began to arrange the field step by step, Yi Tian also entered the magic weapon cave and began to close down. The first thing to do is to continue refining pills, and then spend some time cultivating yourself. Time passed bit by bit. I don't know how long it took to refine a lot of pills. Yi Tian, who was doing cross-knee exercises, suddenly moved in his heart and opened his eyes. Then he motioned and took out a messenger from Zumaji. Master, the field layout is successful, and after experiments, the dark stone has been successfully transformed into fairy jade. Moreover, the best dark stone has also been successfully transformed into the best fairy jade, and the quality is no better than the original fairy jade. Morong's excited voice came from the messenger. Hearing this sound, Yi Tian's body flashed and disappeared from his place. The next moment, he had appeared in the west of the Mithraea Palace, next to a huge field. Master, look. Seeing Yi Tian's appearance, Morong Chuchu immediately welcomed her. She held a top-grade fairy jade in her left and right hands. Master, these 2 top-grade fairy jade, one is the original fairy jade and the other is transformed from the top-grade dark stone. Master, see if you can find out which is the original and which is transformed from the dark stone. Yi Tian's eyes swept over the 2 fairy jade, looked at Morong and smiled clearly. Clearly, are you testing me? As like as 2 peas, he had seen very clearly that 2 of the jade were processed in a special way and turned into a completely identical shape, square square square. After all, there is a big difference between fairy jade and dark stone in shape. If it is not processed, you can see which dark stone has been transformed and which is the original fairy jade at a glance. These 2 pieces of fairy jade are also full of extremely strong aura, and even there is no big difference in the intensity of aura. And the color is white and transparent without any impurities. Only through the naked eye, I can't really tell the difference between the 2. If Morong hadn't solemnly told him to distinguish, I'm afraid Yi Tian thought that the 2 best fairy jade must be the original best fairy jade. If you can't even tell which kind of fairy jade, will you lose face? Although Yi Tian admitted in his heart that he could not distinguish between the 2 kinds of fairy jade, he still didn't admit defeat immediately. He took 2 pieces of fairy jade and touched them in his hand. The feeling and temperature were the same. There was no difference. Suddenly, his nose moved a few times, then smiled, raised the fairy jade in his right hand and said, "This fairy jade is converted from the best ghost stone." Master, who can tell? Morong was stunned, said in his mouth, quickly took over 2 fairy jade and checked it carefully. A moment later, she looked up at Yi Tian suspiciously. Master, there is no difference between these 2 fairy jade. How do you know? It's covered? Yi Tian said with a smile, it's not true. There must be some differences between the 2 pieces of fairy jade. The fairy jade turned from the best dark stone has a lot of your breath, while the other piece is much less. It shows that the best fairy jade has been played by you for the longest time and has the most contact. Naturally, it's the best fairy jade after transformation. I see it from this point. Hearing Yi Tian's words, Morong Chuchu finally took a long breath and said, I thought something was wrong. The transformation of the best fairy jade was not perfect. It seems that Shifu's mind is really delicate. Really, the disciple played with this fairy jade and compared it with other original best fairy jade one by one. Then he selected this best fairy jade with the same rich aura as the transformed best fairy jade for Shifu to distinguish. I didn't expect Shifu unexpectedly, he found a unique way, which wasted his disciple's painstaking efforts in vain. Ha ha ha. Clearly, your field branch has made great contributions to the success of transforming Xinyu this time. Shifu must reward you well and give. Yi Tian laughed, took out hundreds of jade bottles from Zumaji, put them in front of Morong Chuchu, and said loudly, all the disciples of the field division will each reward 5 pills refined by the Taisho division, 1 pill I personally refined, and all the disciples of the Tiangong division will each reward 1,000 top-grade fairy jade for cultivation, all of which will be allocated from the fairy jade transformed from the top-grade dark stone. The field branch disciples on the scene heard such a reward and couldn't help cheering immediately. Yi Tian pressed his hands together, and then said to Morong, as the disciple of the Emperor's master, the resources needed to be trained can be retrieved in the library of the palace of the palace of the palace. If you need master's medicine, you can bring it up at any time, and tailor it according to your own conditions.
Thank you, master. Morong Chuchu didn't expect Yi Tian to give himself such treatment.
It can be said that no one in the whole Maitreya palace, including those great friars in Yupu territory, has such resource treatment.
You deserve it.
Your contribution to the Maitreya palace will be handed down for all ages and will be worshipped by future generations. Yi Tianqi praised with great satisfaction. Master, although the best dark stone is successfully transformed into the best fairy jade, it needs a lot of the best dark stone to obtain a lot of the best fairy jade.
Morong said hesitantly.
You don't have to worry about this. There are still a lot of top-grade dark stones.
Yi Tian said something and motioned.
He took out 500 or 600 Shumi rings from Shumi and put them next to those jade bottles.
There are all the best dark stones here? Morong asked in a daze, looking at such a number of Zumaji.
Similarly, he nodded immediately, yes, here are all the best dark stones, all from the underworld.
Now the underworld is our resource library.
When you need the best dark stones, you can search the underworld.
Isn't our Maitreya palace rich?
Morong spoke clearly and motioned. He disturbed a Zumaji move in his hand, quickly laid down his mind and began to check it. The Shumi ring she immediately checked was full of top-quality dark stones. At a glance, she couldn't see the edge, and she didn't know whether there were millions or tens of millions. Seeing Morong clearly, he couldn't help taking a breath of air conditioning. If all these top-grade dark stones were transformed into top-grade fairy jade, how strong would the strength of the Maitreya palace be? Clear, what's the speed of transforming fairy jade? At this time, Yi Tian asked the most critical question. Master Hui, generally speaking, you can convert 10,000 pieces of the best fairy jade in 10 days. If you convert too many pieces at the same time, it will certainly take more time. Through the experiment, the disciple calculated that the efficiency of converting 10,000 pieces each time is the highest. If this speed is not enough, you can arrange several more fields like this. However, the materials for arranging the fields are insufficient, so you can only arrange them at present by this one, Morong said with some regret.
Jing Xiu.
Yi Tian whispered a greeting when he heard the speech.
Master, the disciple is here. Duan Jingxiu came over at once and said respectfully.
By field materials and refining materials within the whole clan. You can decide the price yourself. The most important thing is not to let any disciple suffer losses. You can see that as long as there is a field, there will be immortal jade in the palace.
Yes.
Duan Jingxiu immediately agreed and left here. Don't worry, there will be enough materials in the field.
If the Earth Star doesn't get together, there are other spiritual domains, such as Daihuan spiritual domain, Luotian spiritual domain, Longsan spiritual domain.
There are countless materials in the 10,000 domains of the heavens.
Yi Tian then said confidently to Morong.
After inspecting the transformation of Xinyu field, Yi Tian summoned Situjuanru of Tiangong branch to ask about the refining of Wulin puppets. During this period of time, according to Yi Tian's previous orders, Tiangong branch has refined more than 30,000 martial soul puppets, making the total number of martial soul puppets now reach 100000. Originally, Yi Tian wanted to continue refining, but the number of animal souls was insufficient. Even if the puppet body was refined, it could not be put into use without animal soul drive. Although there are hundreds of thousands of monsters in Yi Tian's hands, these monsters already belong to the Maitreya Palace and have made great contributions to the Great Warming Show.
Naturally, Yi Tian will not attack them.
Looking at the refining of martial soul puppets, Tian asked the Tiangong division to focus on refining armor. Compared with the huge number of disciples in the Maitreya Palace, the number of armor is still insufficient. Next, Tian was busy for 6 or 7 days, distributing resources and rewarding the disciples who made contributions to the war with Mingxiu. At the same time, Tian made a strict assessment of the kamikaze army sergeants and absorbed all the kamikaze army sergeants as disciples of the Maitreya Palace. Although these kamikaze sergeants did not directly participate in the war with Mingxiu in the later stage, they all fought through life and death in the Battle of Maobei Wuhai.
No one retreated, and Tian completely completed them.
For a moment, the Maitreya Palace was decorated with lanterns and colorful lights. It was a lively scene. On this day, Tian, who returned to the magic weapon cave to repair, received a messenger again. The herald came from the disciples of the Foreign Affairs Hall. It said that there was a sign from the West Sea that the legendary sea market was about to appear. There are 3 different images overseas.
One is the Mirage, which Tian once entered. The second is the Fairy Mountain. It is through the Fairy Mountain that Tian dreamily entered the great wilderness spirit domain.
The Sea City, which is juxtaposed with Mirage and Fairy Mountain, has not yet appeared.
Tian's understanding of this phenomenon is very limited, but since he knows the news, he naturally wants to see it.
When he came out of the magic weapon cave, Tian pondered a little and didn't disturb anyone.
He directly exercised the divine wing and went overseas.
On his way, he has covered the whole West Sea with his mind. Within the sensing range of mind, Tian found that there was a colorful hazy light emerging in some sea area of the West Sea, as if it were a scattered rainbow floating over that sea area.
It looks very conspicuous. A moment later, Tian was already in the sea, deep in the colorful hazy halo. Tian's eyes shone through.
After he explored carefully, 5 elements of beads appeared in his hands and flew towards the bottom of the sea with a fierce sword. Through his previous observation, he found that the hazy colorful halo was not generated out of thin air, but refracted through the seawater by a luminous body. But the luminous body is deep in the sea, and his source heavenly I can't see what it exists. If it had been in the past, Tian would have taken an extremely cautious attitude. After finding out all the reasons, he decided what response to take, rather than going straight forward to explore like this. In the seawater, there is also a colorful halo, and the deeper it goes to the bottom of the sea, the more obvious it is. The speed of the fierce soldier's flying sword was several times faster than before, but in a few seconds, Tian had seen the radiant body with the naked eye. At this glance, he immediately denied all previous guesses.
A luminous object is neither a luminous sphere. It's not a strange magic weapon.
Similarly, it is not a genius treasure with many different colors. What came into Tian's eyes was a building, a room of different styles, emitting a hazy halo.
It's nothing.
What surprised Tian most is that this large building is condensed into one, forming such a large lump, which moves slowly upward in the sea. If you continue to move according to this situation, it will certainly surface soon. At this time, Tian saw the truth of the luminous body, but he was not in a hurry to get close. Obviously, this is not an ordinary building, but an existence similar to a magic weapon after refining. Such a magic weapon with a radius of 3 or 4 miles, the materials needed are undoubtedly massive, and the construction of so many rooms must also have special uses.
Tian steps on the fierce soldier flying sword, and Tian's eyes shine through and look at the buildings. Sure enough, as he guessed, those buildings were indeed refined. Moreover, there is a small transmission array outside each building.
Tian remembered that he had heard the high-level officials of overseas Sangsingdong and Lingchong Sec say that the so-called sea market can exchange treasures, and fairy jade can be used to exchange other treasures.
That's why this vision is called the sea market. Is it through this transmission array that treasure exchange is realized?
Thinking of this, Tian gestured and held up his mountain and river seal in his hand. Just as he was about to use the real mountain river Inxian town to suppress the so-called sea market, he suddenly saw a flash of light in the architectural community, and a middle-aged monk quickly flew to Tian not far away. From the smell of the man, there should be the cultivation of Yuanyingjing in the later stage. Tian was really surprised by this situation. This friar was obviously a real human friar, not a demon friar, nor the flesh and bones of Mingxiu. However, there are such human friars on the Earth Star. In other words, the so-called sea market does not exist on the Earth Star, but enters the Earth Star from other spiritual domains through space channels.
Yi Tian and the middle-aged monk didn't speak.
They looked at each other across more than 10 feet of seawater.
Finally, the middle-aged friar first said, "Which spiritual region friar is this Taoist friend?"
"And you?"
Yi Tian didn't answer, but asked directly.
"I am naturally a friar in the Holy Land, my little Pang Lai," the friar replied calmly.
Little Pang Lai.
Yi Tian suddenly remembered that the high-level officials of Lingchong sect in Sanqing Cave had introduced themselves. It is said that there are 3 sect doors overseas, one is Lingchong sect, the other is Sanqing Cave, and the other is the most mysterious Little Pang Lai.
No one has seen the monk of Little Pang Lai appear, and I don't know where Little Pang Lai is?
Unexpectedly, when I came to check the sea market today, I actually met the friar of Little Pang Lai, and the friar of Little Pang Lai's cultivation is much higher than that of Sangxingdong and Lingchong.
Can we say that Xia Penglai is Haisher wine Xia Penglai?
It's really possible. Yi Tian did not show much enthusiasm or hostility until he found out what kind of sect Xiao Pang Lai was and why he was so mysterious.
He just nodded slightly and said, "It's a Taoist friend of Little Pang Lai. Nice to meet you. I'm not a monk in other spiritual regions.
I'm also a local sect of the Earth Star, called the Maitreya Palace." "Who knows," the friar sneered at his speech, "this Taoist friend, why did we deceive each other with lies when we first met?
How can I not know that there is a Maitreya Palace in the Holy Land?"
Yi Tian said expressionless, "The information you got should be the last time the sea market appeared?" Naturally, there was no Maitreya Palace at that time. The Maitreya Palace was established less than 3 years ago. After decades, you naturally didn't know the latest news.
Nonsense.
The friar snorted coldly and said, "No matter when the Maitreya Palace was established, even if it has been established for 30 years, you should also be a friar from other spiritual regions?"
"But why deny it?"
Yi Tian laughed and said, "Yi is naturally a native of the Holy Land spiritual domain."
"Why do you think he is a monk in other spiritual domains?"
You should be only in your 20s, but you have reached the midterm cultivation of Yuanying territory.
This is impossible in the Holy Land spiritual realm.
If there are such amazing people, Zhao should have heard of it.
This can happen only in a magical spiritual realm we don't know,"
said the middle-aged monk with certainty. During this period of time, Yi Tian made another breakthrough in his cultivation by cultivating in the magic weapon cave in the 5-time field, and has entered the middle of Yuanying territory.
Yi Tian smiled again and said, "If I said that I was practicing in the Holy Land, you must not believe it?"
"Of course not." "It's nonsense," the middle-aged friar snorted coldly. "Believe it or not, Yi has done all he said. There's no need to explain it to the Taoist friend in detail. However, Yi has one thing to ask the Taoist friend.
The Holy Land spiritual region was almost poisoned by the underworld. As a monk of the human race in the Holy Land spiritual region, why don't you always show your face? Do you ignore the life and death of the Earth Star human race?" Yi Tian's voice cooled down.
He was not enthusiastic about the friar, but it was for this reason. The middle-aged friar was about to say something, but suddenly, in the large buildings getting closer and closer, another figure flew into the air and came to the middle-aged friar.
"Master, why did you come here in person?"
Seeing this man, the middle-aged friar in the later stage of Yuanying territory saluted respectfully and said. Yi Tianqiao in front took a look somewhere behind him, and then looked at the old monk again. He saw that he was a white-bearded old man with thin cheeks and bright eyes. He unexpectedly had the cultivation accomplishments in the later stage of transforming the divine realm. There are such monks in the Holy Land.
As a teacher, I naturally want to see them.
The old man stared at Yi Tian, then turned his eyes and showed a surprised look. In the sight, a female monk appeared in front of the middle-aged monk of the other party out of thin air, and his accomplishments reached half the accomplishments of Yupu territory.
After another half step, he can enter the ranks of the real big monks of Yupu territory.
The old man who was supposed to talk to Yi Tian made a head check on Murong Qianxian, who appeared out of thin air, and said, "This Taoist friend is polite.
This Taoist friend, I'd better answer Ye's previous questions first. Morong Chanshan didn't speak, but Yi Tian said with a heavy face.
When my master talks to your elders, where can you interrupt? The middle-aged monk surnamed Zhao suddenly changed his face and scolded. In this case, Morong Chanshan frowned and said in a cold voice, "You young generation, dare to speak to my master like this.
Are you tired of living? You. The middle-aged monk surnamed Zhao was stunned.
He pointed to Yi Tian and Morong Chanshan.
He couldn't speak at once.
A monk who is half a step away from Yupu territory calls only a young man in his 20s, and only a young man in the middle of Yuanying territory as his master.
Is there such a thing in the world?
The old man also frowned slightly and stretched out his hand to stop the middle-aged friar.
He also looked at Yi Tian and Morong Chanshan and said, "Are you really a teacher-apprentice relationship?" Yi Tianling said in a cold voice, "What is our relationship? You don't have to worry about it. Yi only asked a question before. Why are you indifferent and do nothing?"
Who dares to go to Little Panglai and talk to the disciples of Little Panglai in such a tone? The old man didn't speak, but a voice came into Yi Tian and Morong Chanshan's ears.
Then a figure flashed to the old man.
According to his appearance, he was just a middle-aged man. But from the feeling of his breath, it is obvious that he is a real great monk in Yupu territory.
Jade Pu territory?
Yi Tian blurted out that this time, he was really a little surprised. He never thought that there were monks in such a state in the door of the Earth Star.
The sect door of the Great Friar in Yupu territory, not to mention on the Earth Star, even in the square-inch spiritual domain, is also an extraordinary existence.
I didn't expect you to have some knowledge.
I know my ancestor is a great friar in Yupu territory.
Now I'll give you a chance to kneel down and kowtow to Xiao Panglai and apologize, and then join us to work for Xiao Panglai.
This festival will be exposed. Otherwise, you will be treated for your disrespect to Xiao Panglai. The middle-aged friar who first appeared had confidence immediately after the appearance of the great friar in Yupu territory. Hearing the speech, Yi Tian laughed. Why? Little Panglai bullied us. Is there no big monk in Yupu territory in the Maitreya Palace?
As soon as his voice fell, in front of Yi Tian, Xianrun showed his body shape, holding his Tian Luo net in his hand.
Ah, this is the ancestor of the Maitreya Palace. Unexpectedly, there are big friars in Yupu territory in the Maitreya Palace. It seems that this is a misunderstanding. If the junior of your clan didn't talk nonsense here, there wouldn't be such an embarrassing situation. The ancestor of Xia Panglai only had the initial accomplishments in Yupu territory.
From the perspective of breath, there was no Xianrun majestic, and suddenly saw Xianrun coming out, he immediately changed his attitude. Who knows, Xianrun didn't pay attention to the little Panglai's big friar in Yupu territory, but bowed to Yi Tianyi and said, "Master, please forgive Xianrun for coming late. Please clarify what to do with these people." Yi Tian just nodded slightly, looked at the other three, and said again, "I don't care how strong you little Panglai is and how high you think of yourself. If you don't answer Yi's question just now, don't blame Yi for being impolite and searching for your soul." The monks of the three little Panglai opposite were stunned by the scene that Xianrun called Yi Tian's master just now. Hearing Yi Tian's tough words, the big monk of Yupu territory smiled coldly. "There's no need to explain to you about the matter of little Panglai. If you want to search the soul, it depends on whether you have this ability. Your 3 accomplishments are not enough to be wild in front of little Panglai."
Really?
Yi Tian's lips turned up and gently spit out 2 words. The mountain and river seal in his hand was instantly enlarged into 100 mu area, covering the surrounding sea area. Because of the rapid amplification of mountain and river seals, several undercurrents surged in all directions, just like overturning rivers and seas. As soon as the mountain river seal came out, the 3 monks of the other side felt stiff and could not move before they had time to make any response.
"Well, you show up," Yi Tian said to the sea around him at this time.
"Yes, Palace Master."
As soon as Yi Tian's voice fell, several responses came nearby, and 7 great friars in Yupu territory, such as Morong Jun, Yen Yunyang and Yen Zhongkai, appeared.
It was Morong Chanshan who found that Yi Tian came to explore the sea market alone. He took the first step because he was worried about Yi Tian's safety, and then informed all the great friars in Yupu territory on the way.
Search the souls of 3 people respectively. Yi Tian said to the crowd with his hands on his back. Immediately, Yu Yan, Yan Zhongkai and Mu Rongjuan took the lead, held down the head of a friar in Xia Penglai and began to search the soul. At this time, the 3 little Penglai friars who were searched for souls were so shocked that they could not be described in words. None of them thought that the other party would do it as soon as they said it, and there was no room for half a minute of resistance on their own side. What shocked them even more was that there were so many great friars in Yupu territory in the so-called Maitreya Palace. The young monk surnamed Ji was actually called the Palace Master and Master. How can a sect with such strength be a sect in the Holy Land? When they were searched, they had countless thoughts in their hearts, and they all had a bad hunch. However, under the suppression of the Founder's Mountain and River Seal, the 3 people's ability to speak has been suppressed, so they have to be searched for souls. At this time, the buildings emitting colorful halos below also stopped rising and suspended in the sea under the suppression of mountain and river seals. Time passed bit by bit in this strange silence. More than 10 minutes later, Yu Yan raised his hand, removed his hand from the head of the monk in the later period of Yuanying territory, and said to Yi Tian, Palace Master, this man's name is Zhao Shiwan, the patriarch of Xia Penglai. The monk in Huashan territory, Qin Bang, is the master of Zhao Shiwan and the supreme elder of Xia Penglai. Of course, the monk in Yupu territory didn't find any taboos, but only knew that he was the ancestor of Xia Penglai. Then why didn't they stand up and fight with the Pluto to protect the Earth star? Yi Tian didn't care much about the identity of these people. He directly asked the question he was most concerned about. Yu Yan immediately replied, Xia Penglai is located in a mustard space on the seabed. In order to hide their sector, they completely closed the space and ignored the outside world. It is a real Qingxiu. What's the matter with the sea market? Yi Tian glanced, and the 3 friars of Little Penglai asked. Yu Yan said, that's the means for Xia Penglai to recruit disciples. Every 50 years, they come out of the mustard space to find some good seedlings with strange bones and excellent qualifications to enter the sect. So, there should be many disciples in Little Penglai? Yi Tian asked with his eyes on the building. Yu Yan nodded. At present, Xia Penglai has 653 disciples, which has developed from 25 monks who survived the disaster of the last Great World to the current scale. The original name of the sect is Penglai Pavilion. By the way, the Palace Master, from Zhao Shiwan's memory, the disciples also found information about Kunlun practitioners. There are 108 sealed Kunlun practitioners in Xia Penglai, which should be related to the Palace Master. Those disciples belong to the same clan. In addition, there is a holy beast protecting the clan, which is a white dragon. The disciples think it should have something to do with the dragon demon, the holy beast protecting the mountain in the Maitreya Palace. What? Kunlun cultivation. Hearing this news, Yi Tian ate a lot and was filled with ecstasy. He knew that 2 batches of Kunlun cultivation had been sealed, hoping to dispel the smell of robbery, break the seal and regenerate the Kunlun family in the future. One group was encountered by himself and successfully rescued, while the other group was never heard from. After returning to the Earth Star, Yi Tian once covered many places when fighting with the underworld. When observing the underworld, he also paid attention to looking for those Kunlun practices, but he never found anything. Unexpectedly, I was surprised to get the news of Kunlun Xiu in this Little Penglai. As for the news of the dragon girl, Yi Tian was very happy. It is likely that the white dragon is the daughter of the dragon demon and the Taoist companion of disciple Mo Feiyu. As for the legendary undersea dragon palace, Yi Tian suspected that it was probably the small Penglai architectural community. If it appeared on the undersea, people who did not know the truth would really mistake it for the so-called Big Dragon Palace. Did those Kunlun practitioners open the seal? Suddenly, Yi Tian thought of this question and asked. Yu Yan shook his head and said, without opening the seal, these friars of Little Penglai knew that they could not stop the erosion of looting embers on those Kunlun monks, so they kept it intact. By the way, Palace Master, the building community where the pavilion is located is where the sect of Little Penglai is located. On weekdays, Little Penglai's disciples seldom meet. They practice in their own rooms and needed what resources are mostly carried out through small portals. What evil deeds did the Little Penglai friar do to the common people? Yi Tian continued to ask. Yu Yan thought for a moment and said, to be exact, Xia Penglai is a reclusive sect. It is usually in the mustard space and rarely contacts with the outside world. Xia Penglai's ancestors had some roots with the predecessors of Kunlun cultivation, so they took care of the sealed Kunlun cultivation until now. However, the younger brothers of Xia Penglai have a few qualities of helping the common people and the world, and the most important thing is their personal growth and cultivation. This cannot be compared with our Maitreya palace. Hearing Yu Yan's words, Yi Tian's face improved a little. In fact, such monks who only consider themselves and ignore the common people can be found everywhere in any spiritual realm. This is a self-protection attitude. Although it seems that there is nothing wrong, it can show the indifference of human nature. At this time, Morongjun and Yen Zhongkai also stopped almost at the same time and completed the soul searching of the two little Penglai friars. Palace leader, what the ever-changing Demon King said is basically true, and the Supreme Elder searched by the disciple has no bad deeds. Only when he has reached this level of cultivation, he is a rare figure among the Earth stars. He is arrogant and doesn't pay attention to others. Morongjun's body flashed, came to Yi Tian and said. Both Yi Tian and Yen Zhongkai heard the dialogue between Yi Tian and Yu Yan clearly, and even the three little Penglai friars who were searched for souls heard it clearly. Is there any other valuable news? Yi Tian looked at Yen Zhongkai, who also came to him, glanced at them and asked. The valuable news is about another mustard space. In the memory of the little Penglai Supreme Elder, there is a place called Mirage in a certain position of the Earth Star. The local friars with the same Earth Star are the strong ones who survived from the last Great World. Morongjun thought and said. Is that strong man Huasu? Asked Yi Tian. Yes, it's called Huasu. Although the strong man survived, the realm fell very badly and was close to falling. The mustard space will automatically open every 50 years or so, and the outside world can enter it. When Xiao Penglai appeared in the world to recruit disciples, he also paid attention to the mirage, but it seems to be full of danger. Xiao Penglai's friar I haven't entered it for hundreds of years, so the specific situation is not very clear. But the disciples have searched the space where the mirage is located, Morongjun continued. Well, this news is very valuable. Yi Tian's eyebrows spread and his expression relaxed a lot. When the mirage was opened, his cultivation level was still very low. It was just the cultivation level in the cave. He encountered danger there. Fortunately, Huasu saved him. And she saw that what she practiced was the upper part of the idea of the Sui Wang temple handed down by the Sui Wang emperor, and agreed to enter the mirage again when she reached the golden elixir realm, when she would pass it on to the lower part of the idea of the Sui Wang temple. These things happened 3 years ago. It is likely that according to Huasu's idea, it will take at least 50 years to cultivate to the golden elixir realm, just when the next mirage opens. However, no one can imagine that in only 3 years, he has reached the middle of Yuanying territory. Later, Yi Tian also deduced the reasons for the formation of the mirage. With his knowledge and experience, he naturally considered the mustard space. However, at that time, his self-cultivation was still very low and there were too many things to do. He didn't have enough time and experience to find this mustard space. And with his cultivation, even if he finds it, he may not be able to do anything. But now it's different. If he didn't face the attack of the Pluto as soon as he returned to the Earth star, maybe he had embarked on the road of looking for a mirage. It was a mistake to get the news of the mirage today. Huasu was in a bad state at that time. It can be seen that the state of cultivation has been seriously reduced. If she can find Huasu as soon as possible, it will be of great help to her with her current means. Thinking about this, Yi Tiandao stopped wasting time and looked at Yen Zhongkai. How is the ancestor of little Penglai Yupu territory? Has he ever done anything harmful to nature and reason? Yen Zhongkai shook his head and said, this man is dedicated to hard cultivation, and he doesn't even care about little Penglai's affairs. He can be regarded as a bitter monk out and out. Yi Tian took a long breath. If these people were just disrespectful to themselves and even indifferent to the Earth star, it wouldn't be anything. But if you do something outrageous, you have to punish yourself. These monks inherited from a great world on Earth are too rare on Earth. Yi Tian hopes that there will be such an end. After thinking about it, Yi Tian asked again, did you know some reasons for the destruction of the last cultivation world from soul searching? Nurongjun and Yu Yen did not speak, but looked at Yen Zhongkai. Yen Zhongkai knew that only he could make it clear, so he said, Palace Master, as a sect inherited from ancient times, Little Panglai has declined greatly, but some information has been handed down. The destruction of the last great world was due to the collusion between the human friars and the demon world. At that time, there were a large number of high-level friars in the Holy Land spiritual domain. The demon world and the human friars reasonably sealed the spiritual source of the Earth Star, causing the signs of destruction on the Earth Star, which led to the death of the Earth Star. Now, the seal of that year has been opened bit by bit, and the aura of Earth Star is also recovering rapidly. How could it be? Who are those people who collude with the demon world? Yi Tian asked with a frown, which was so serious that it made people shudder. Those Terran friars are not local friars of the Earth Star, but come from a place called the Dark Abyss in the square-inch spiritual domain. There are a lot of them, and some of them are very powerful. Yen Zhongkai continued. Yi Tian pondered for a long time and finally nodded and said, I understand. I finally understand that in the disaster of star destruction, not only the demon world plays a role in fueling the fire, but also the appearance of the underworld. The Dark Abyss is a stronghold of the underworld in the square-inch spiritual domain. Those human friars are scum of the human race attached to the underworld. The underworld, the demon world, plus those traitors of the human race, what a powerful force to add together. No wonder many friars who know the truth have been erased from this memory, even Kunlun friars. If they remember the truth and seek revenge in the demon world and the underworld, not to mention these two giants, even if it is only a dark abyss, they will definitely let those friars who want revenge fall completely. Did the underworld's flesh and bones participate in the great disaster? Yi Tian continued to ask. Thinking that Zheng Huasu sealed the ghost of the underworld god in the mirage, Yi Tian felt that things were not as simple as that. It seemed that Huasu knew the ghost of the underworld god very well, and the ghost obviously did not belong to the Dark Abyss. If it belongs to the Dark Abyss, it naturally belongs to the underworld. The underworld will definitely treasure and protect the ghost face mask, and even begin to condense the soul of the underworld god at that time. This situation is hard to say. What we get from our memory is only the news about the human friars. Maybe at that time, the human friars were not so easy to distinguish between the human body and the real friars, and the possibility that the human friars were mixed with the human body and bones was not ruled out, Yen Zhongkai said in a deep voice. Yi Tian nodded slightly and asked no more questions. These are the most true and comprehensive memories from the three friars in Panglai. The news obtained from interrogating the three friars is just like this. It seems that Huashu may know more about this matter. However, whether the underworld is involved or not is not very important. If the underworld participates, Yi Tian will immediately destroy the whole underworld. If the underworld does not participate, Yi Tian will slowly clean up the underworld in the future. The end of the underworld is doomed, but it's just a matter of time. Yu Yen, lead the way to see Kunlun Xiu and the White Dragon. Yi Tian said no more and directly told Yu Yen that he searched the soul of the leader of Xiapenglai. The leader must know more about the trivial affairs of Xiapenglai than the supreme elder and ancestor. Yes. Yu Yen agreed, moved, came to the attic somewhere in the building community below, and pointed inside. Palace Master, Kunlun Xiu is inside. Okay, follow me. Yi Tian nodded slightly, urged the 5-element beads in his hand, and went directly through the attic closed by the field to come inside. There is a lot of space in the attic. As soon as Yi Tian Gang entered it, he saw rows of Kunlun Xiu sealed in the congenital spirit jade. This situation is similar to the first time I saw Kunlun Xiu. His eyes swept over these congenital spiritual jade one by one. Yes, it happened to be 108, not many. In this way, you can give an explanation to those Kunlun disciples. Yi Tian felt much more relaxed. He made continuous gestures and incorporated all these Kunlun practices into Shumi precepts. Go and see the White Dragon. When all the congenital Lingyu don't fall into the ground and earn Zumaji, Yi Tian said to Yu Yen again. They came to the attic. Yu Yen moved and flashed in front of a magnificent hall. Here.
Yu Yan pointed inside.
Go in and have a look.
As soon as Yi Tianlu looked at the hall, he saw that the hall itself is a magic weapon. It has the attribute of space stone.
It should be that the space inside is much larger than here. With this sentence finished, he once again urged the 5-shaped beads to step into it in the hazy halo. Sure enough, as he expected, the space was very broad.
At first glance, there was a large water area, and there were several small buildings on the shore of the water area.
The situation belonging to the pavilion in the pavilion is like another world in the hall.
Yu Yan glanced at the water, then looked at an attic on the bank and said, "Palace Master, the white dragon has been able to change human shape, sometimes in the water and sometimes in the attic."
"Don't look, I'm here."
While he was talking, suddenly the door of the attic opened gently and a woman in white came out of it.
She looks very beautiful and has outstanding temperament. At first glance, she seems to be a fairy who doesn't eat human fireworks.
Although Shanhian Town presses down the entire architectural community, it belongs to another space within the magic weapon, which has no impact on women.
Do you know Murphy?
When Yi Tian saw this woman, he immediately felt a breath very similar to the dragon demon, and his heart had been determined for a few minutes. "Of course, Murphy Fish is my sister's companion," the woman replied without hesitation.
"Your sister?"
Yi Tian was stunned and knew that this must be the little daughter of the dragon demon, not Long Qingyi, the wife of Murphy Fish.
However, it's also a great harvest. I have an explanation for Longye. He nodded slightly and said, "It's good to know."
"Your father Longye has a good relationship with me, but he didn't come this time."
"If you want to see Imochingyi, I can let you see it now." "Okay, thank you, Taoist friend."
The dragon lady was stunned when she heard the speech, but then said that the current dragon lady had 7 levels of cultivation, but she was still very gentle. She called a Taoist friend to Yi Tian, a monk in Yuanying territory. Yi Tian then made a gesture, released the magic weapon cave where Murphy Fish was, and quickly zoomed in on the shore.
Non-fish, out of the house. With Yi Tian's call, Murphy Fish appeared from the magic weapon cave.
When I saw the situation in front of me, I couldn't help but be stunned. Then my face showed a color of ecstasy and ran over quickly. "Qingyi.
Qingyi. Brother-in-law, I'm Longyi."
"No, sister," seeing the Murphy Fish's look, the dragon woman hurriedly said, and her body flashed aside. "If you hide more slowly, I'm afraid the Murphy Fish has jumped on her."
"You are already as like as 2 peas, said the dragon, who was exactly the same as the dragon's clothes. The brilliance in my eyes just disappeared without a trace, but instead, it was an endless look of loss. Yes, I have been able to take shape. Longyi looked quite lonely.
In this case, she could naturally see that even Murphy Fish had no news of her sister. At this time, Yi Tian broke the short silence. "Long Dao Yu, since you can confirm your identity. Your father is now in the Maitreya Palace. He once entrusted you to find Dao Yu, and today you finally got your wish. As for this little Pang Lai, I have taken it.
You are completely free." "Ah, Taoist Yi, thank you very much."
Longyi is willing to go with Taoist and her brother-in-law to see her father.
Speaking of it, too much time has gone. However, the friars of Little Pang Lai also begged Taoist friends not to be embarrassed.
I was seriously injured and saved by the friars of Little Pang Lai. Although I was recognized as a spiritual pet, they were kind to me and provided me with a lot of resources source. I can have today's physical strength.
Longyi said thoughtfully. In that case, as you said, Yi doesn't embarrass the people in Xiapanglei. You can go out with us.
Yi Tian said something, put away his magic weapon, and nodded to Longyi. "I will let the monk who recognizes the Lord remove the brand of God." "The person who recognizes the Lord is the Supreme Elder." Longyi nodded slightly and said.
"Okay, put on this treasure coat and come with me."
Yi Tian also nodded, motioned, and sent a Xianin stone treasure coat to the dragon girl.
The dragon girl didn't ask any more. Ian put the brand of God on her treasure coat and put it on quickly.
Yi Tian didn't say much, so he urged the 5-element beads to flash out of the attic with Yuing Stone, Murphy Fish, and Dragon Girl. The party came to the 3 friars of Little Pang Lai without hindrance. Because of the protection of treasure clothes, Shan Hasil naturally had no impact on the Dragon Girl.
Only 3 friars in Xia Penglai were suppressed by Shan Hasil. Standing in front of the 3 little Penglai friars, the dragon woman looked at the supreme elder with a complex look, but didn't say anything. Yi Tian, with his hands on his back, said in front of the elder's face, "Nian, you little Penglai friars have no evil deeds. This time, they have not embarrassed any of your disciples. However, after the dragon girl is my old friend, and the dragon girl doesn't want to be the spiritual pet of little Penglai anymore. Yi can let you go because of the dragon girl's plea." However, Yi took away the sealed Kunlun monks in little Penglai. Under the suppression of Shanhian, the 3 generations of monks in Xia Penglai can't even blink their eyelids, let alone have other meanings. Yi Tian motioned and put away the mountain and river seals. Only then did they restore their freedom of movement. Naturally, all 3 of them heard what Yi Tian said just now. At this time, they suddenly recovered their freedom. The old ancestor of Yupu territory in Xia Penglai looked relaxed. He quickly hugged Yi Tian, then bowed to other monks, and then said, "I offended you a lot just now. I'm here to make amends to Lord Yi and you. Since Lord Yi has an old relationship with the dragon family, let Lord Yi take it." As he spoke, the ancestor of little Penglai glared at the supreme elder and shouted, "Don't remove the brand of God and abolish the blood contract as soon as possible." "Yes. Yes. That's it." The old man quickly promised and began to move. The ancestor of little Penglai knew that this group was really led by Yi Tian, and there were a group of disciples of the great friar of Yupu territory, and the great friar of Yupu territory also recognized the young man surnamed Yi. Based on the experience of the ancestor of little Penglai, he knew that Yi Tian was definitely an extraordinary person. He did not dare to despise them anymore, and he spoke very respectfully. After all, if Yi Tian wanted to kill them just now, it was just a matter of moving his fingers. Even now, if these people turn their faces again, I'm afraid no disciple of Xia Penglai can escape safely. Aware of this, little Penglai once again hugged his fist and said, "I wanted to save Kunlun disciples, but I still have no way. I think Lord Yi and Kunlun disciples have the same old, maybe it can make them out of the sea of suffering, so Lord Yi will take them away." Yi Tian asked Yu Yen and others about soul searching before. He didn't avoid the 3 little Penglai friars. Therefore, as long as he wasn't stupid, he could infer that Yi Tian had a relationship with Kunlun cultivation. Simply, the ancestor of little Penglai gave a favor. Yi Tian just nodded his head and didn't even say a polite word. Obviously, he didn't get the other party's favor. He just informed the other party. Whether the other party agrees or not, it doesn't affect Yi Tian's decision. At this time, between 3 or 2 words, the elder of little Penglai and the dragon girl have dissolved the blood contract, and Long Yi has regained his freedom. "Let's go." Yi Tian didn't look at those little Penglai friars, waved and said, "Lord Yi, please stay." The little Penglai's ancestor even took the initiative to shout Yi Tian at this time. Yi Tian turned slightly and looked at the ancestor of little Penglai. The old ancestor saluted again and said, "I dare to ask, what's the matter with Mingxiu invading the Holy Land? If Lord Yi doesn't dislike the weak power of Xia Penglai, I'd like to lead all the disciples of Xia Penglai to fight against Mingxiu with Lord Yi." Yi Tian waved his hand indifferently and said, "Forget it, Mingxiu has been beaten back to the underworld. If you really want to do something for the people in the world, the demon world may start to invade the Holy Spirit domain soon. At that time, you can fight the demon world again." Ah! Hearing the speech, the ancestor of little Penglai looked sluggish. He just wanted to say something, but Yi Tian had taken the lead in escaping to the water above the sea. After the party came to the sea, Yi Tian looked at the people around him, and finally his eyes fell on Shenrun. "Shenrun, the eye of the demon world should guard against death and should not relax. Don't have so many people for the next thing. You should go back to Death Valley first. Yes, old slave, please obey the master's law." Shenrun respectfully agreed and left here with a big move. Yu Yen stayed, and the others escorted Murphy Fish and Long Yi back to the Maitreya Palace, and then hurried to practice. Yi Tian continued. Yes. Everyone knew that Yi Tian would not let him go, so they didn't say anything more. They all agreed and went to the direction of the Maitreya Palace with Murphy Fish and Dragon Yi.
Changeable devil, you lead the way in front and go to the space where the mirage is located.
After the crowd left, Tian said to Yan. Okay, palace leader, follow me. Yan immediately agreed.
He moved and flew towards the depths of the sea.
Tian's mind moved and summoned a fierce flying sword. He controlled the sword and followed Yan closely.
Seeing that Yan had started at full speed, but the fierce soldier flying sword dared to stay behind him without delay, it was obvious that he had not exhausted his strength. In this case, Tian was also very curious. He sent the spirit of Xian dragon sword with great interest. Sword spirit, you should try your best to see how fast it is.
Master, stand firm.
The purple cloud dragon sword soul unexpectedly said such a sentence. Then Tian suddenly flashed on the fierce soldier's flying sword. In an instant, the fierce soldier's flying sword had thrown Yan away.
Tian was overjoyed.
He knew that the strength of the fierce flying sword had increased a lot, but he didn't expect that the increase was so large. Looking at this situation, you should already have the speed of Tiangong realm power.
Jinling, it's very good. Can you catch up with the speed of your heyday? Tian asked curiously.
The answer of Xian dragon sword spirit immediately rang out in Tian's mind. Master, although my strength has greatly improved, there is still a big gap from the speed at the peak. My current strength is equivalent to the early stage of level 8, but my peak period has reached the late stage of level 8, and my strength is not the same at all. Well, you will do his best to help you recover to your peak. Tian was more surprised when he heard the speech, so he opened his mouth and said. At this time, at the instigation of Tian, the fierce soldier's flying sword stopped in place, waiting for Yan, who was thrown away. Yan did not continue to perform flying escape, but slightly performed a large movement, and appeared around Tian with several aura whirlpools. Palace Master, the divine sword is so fast. Yan was also greatly surprised, but he didn't feel too incredible in his heart. After all, the power of several magic weapons of Tian exceeded his imagination. For example, Tian Luonet, Hui Bao, Shan Hasil. I have gained something from entering the underworld this time, and my strength has been improved.
By the way, how far is it? Tian simply explained a few words and asked.
Yan pointed to the front and said, there's still a distance of thousands of miles.
It's coming soon. Okay, continue to lead the way. Tian nodded slightly.
Yan said no more and continued to fly in the direction he pointed out. The fierce soldier's flying sword didn't surpass Yan again this time, but followed him and flew away like a shadow.
Thousands of miles is the blink of an eye.
After a few breaths, Yan stopped and flew into the air. Before long, Tian and Yan were in the void outside the Earth star. Here, there are also void cracks, spatial turbulence, and various meteorites flying rapidly.
Yan was in the air.
He opened his mind and observed a little. Then he moved again and flew in a certain direction.
This is it.
Soon, Yan stood on a meteorite standing still in the void and said.
Sure enough, it's here.
Tian glanced at the meteorite and really felt a force of space.
This kind of space force cannot exist on other meteorites.
After pointing out the mustard space location Tian was looking for, Yan stopped talking and just looked at the meteorite curiously. The news he got came entirely from searching the soul of little Penglai Patriarch. He was very interested in such a mustard space. The so-called mustard space is shaped like mustard, but it contains heaven and earth, some of which are similar to Zumaji and Spirit Beast Ring. Tian stood in front of this static meteorite, and Yuan Tian's eyes shone through and looked inside. Although the meteorite is only as big as a basketball and its shape is very irregular, Tian didn't see the situation in space after watching it for a long time. It's not because the Yuan Tian eye has lost its function, but because the space wall of the mustard space is too thick.
All that Tian's Yuan Tian eye can see is the space wall of the mustard space. It doesn't penetrate into space at all. Go in and have a look. Tian looked again and finally gave up.
He took out the 5 element beads and whispered to Yan. As soon as the mana urged him, the 5 element beads sent out a faint halo and covered the stationary meteorite. Then he moved and directly hit the meteorite. It's strange to say that at the moment when his body hit the meteorite, Tian felt that the meteorite seemed to become larger, or he became smaller, and was even in a grayish-brown space. All around were gray as like as two peas in the sky. In addition to those gray space walls, there are only you inkstones who closely follow in.
Follow me. Without sensing any danger, Tian said to Yu Yan and continued to fly forward.
At his speed, after more than 10 breaths, he felt that his eyes suddenly brightened, the gray color finally disappeared, and another scene appeared in front of him.
It's really amazing.
Seeing the situation in front of you, Yu Yan couldn't help crying out. But Tian was standing in the same place, his eyes moved slowly, and his eyes showed some color of remembrance. The scenes he saw still felt so familiar. Yes, it was really the scene when the mirage appeared that year. The gray mirage fog, the island and the river remained the same.
It's amazing. Tian murmured.
If he had not met the friar of Little Penglai by chance, even if he tried his best, he could not find the mirage. Who would have thought that such a vast mirage was in a static meteorite? If he is in a void crack, maybe he can accept it more easily.
This way.
Tian, who sighed in his heart, let go of his mind. After sensing somewhere ahead, he said hello and flew to the mirage in the distance. This kind of thing is called mirage fog.
It looks like a living creature.
It can plunder the longevity of ordinary friars.
While flying, he said to Yu Yan. The next moment, he was already in the dark fog.
After a little induction, Tian found something this time.
He sensed the power of divine thoughts from the mirage. This is definitely not an ordinary fog, but a soul.
Moreover, it is definitely not the soul body of nether cultivation, but closer to the soul body of demon cultivation.
Is this the soul of a powerful demon?
No, Tian immediately felt wrong with this idea. These are indeed soul bodies, but they are definitely not a single soul body. From the mottled soul thought breath in the mirage fog, he can judge that this is the fog composed of countless individual soul bodies.
That's it. The last time he entered the mirage, Tian's accomplishments were too different from what they are now.
Many details could not be felt, but this time it was obviously different. The mirage in front of him could no longer escape his eyes.
Palace leader, how does the disciple feel that these mirages seem to be soul bodies?
At this time, the curious Yu Yan finally found some clues and hurried to say.
Yes, this is the soul body, and it's very similar to the soul body of demon cultivation. That's the so-called demon soul. Tian nodded.
While they were talking, the originally calm mirage fog suddenly surged up. The vast mirage fog seemed to be under some invisible traction, and suddenly gathered together. Just in a moment, it changed into a huge face, opened a big black mouth, and bit it at Tian and Yu Yan. Tianling snorted in thought, and the original spiritual fire had been called out by him. At the same time, he made continuous gestures, and more than a dozen thunderbolts fell from the sky and split the face. Under the control of the fire spirit, the original spirit fire turned into a diffuse fire and swept away to the huge face. Under the double attack of thunder and original spiritual fire, the face soon became incomplete, fragmented and shapeless. When Tiangang wanted to drive the original spiritual fire to pursue the victory, a familiar voice suddenly came from his ear. Tian, protect yourself enough, don't exterminate these mirages.
It's Huashu.
Huashu's voice. However, compared with the last time, Huashu's voice seemed very weak at this time.
Hearing this voice, Tian didn't have time to ask more.
He immediately sent a divine thought to the original spirit fire and called him back. The incomplete black face was relieved and turned into a dense mirage again. It spread everywhere and scattered into other mirages, as if the face had never appeared.
Come with me. Tian didn't ask too much and flew to the depths of the dark fog with the original spiritual fire. Finally, in the place where he was deeply impressed, Tian found the spirit jade coffin containing Huashu.
Elder Huasu, are you still here?
Tian asked loudly, looking at the coffin in front of him. Yes, I'm here. Tian. My Kunlun people, I can't imagine that you have reached the middle of Yuanying territory in just 3 years. It's really beyond my expectation. It's impossible. How did you do it?
With Tian's cry, the shadow of Huasu slowly appeared above the Lingyu coffin. Still wearing the ancient costume of that year, with long hair and shawl, his face is still so amazing, but his voice is also very weak this time. Elder Hua Su, because of some opportunities, I had to meet the Sui Emperor.
He passed me the idea of the genuine Sui Emperor view. Later, I came to the present level after many opportunities. Hua Su once saved his life. Yi Tian was always grateful to him.
When he heard the other party ask, he simply answered.
Can you say that you are the one chosen that day? Otherwise, these cannot be explained. Hua Su's voice took some joy. Yi Tian didn't answer Hua Su's words.
He continued, Master Hua Su, by chance, had to live in this mustard space, so he came in directly without waiting for the mirage to appear again. If you're bold, please forgive me.
I can't talk about any implication.
Although I live here, it doesn't belong to me. People outside call it a mirage, but few people know that it's actually just a cell, and I'm a prisoner here. Hua Su's voice said with a bitter smile, if you are a former monk, you won't tell you these things. Since you can find a great monk in Yupu territory as a helper, it doesn't hurt to tell you all this. The great monk in Yupu territory mentioned by Hua Su naturally refers to Yu Yan, the changeable demon king standing next to Yi Tian.
Yi Tian didn't explain Yu Yan's story. He was shocked and asked, Cell? Elder Hua Su, do you mean that you were detained here? Who detained you? Is it Demon Xiao? My Kunlun people, you are really extraordinary. You can see so many ways. It seems that you have been in contact with demon cultivation. Has the demon world begun to attack the Earth Star? Hua Su asked in surprise.
No, the demon world hasn't attacked the Earth Star yet. But I had a hand with Demon Xiao and knew something about the smell of Demon Xiao, so I had this guess.
In that case, Mirage Fog should be the soul of Demon Xiao? Yi Tian shook his head and asked. Yes, my Kunlun people, you really grow up very fast. It seems that we Kunlun people have hope.
Hua Su said in a relieved voice, since you see so much, should you be very curious, why don't I let you remove the souls of those demon families?
Does it mean that removing the spirits of these demons will have any significant impact on the elders?
I guess, since it is a mirage prison here and the elders are imprisoned here, they will certainly not have any friendly feelings or pity for the spirits of these demons.
In addition, I can't think of any other reasons. Yi Tian said thoughtfully.
Unexpectedly, you have not only improved your accomplishments so quickly, but also made people marvel at your knowledge.
You can see the key to the problem at a glance.
People like you, who I have never seen or heard of for many years, are the descendants of the Kunlun family.
It's time to rise in the world.
I didn't want to tell anyone about this, it's useless to say so, but you're destined not to live in the Earth Star for a long time.
You'll certainly go out of the Earth Star and go to the vast and healthy universe in the future.
It's okay to tell you the truth now, which is to know more about the demon family. Hua Su's voice is comforted and in this mirage prison, but his tone is still so soothing and peaceful.
Yi Tian looked up at the empty shadow of Hua Su, nodded slightly, waiting for Hua Su's following.
Hua Su's virtual shadow continued, things should start from the last catastrophe. The scum of the demon family, the Ming family and the human family join hands to attack the Earth Star, trying to destroy the spirit source of the Earth Star, and then the two alien races shared the Earth Star. At that time, the Earth Star was also called the Holy Land Spirit Domain. In order to fight against the underworld, the demon, and the scum of the human race, the Kunlun clan joined hands with many other sects on the Earth Star to fight against the invaders, but our strength was too weak.
After losing a lot of manpower, we finally failed.
The defeat was irreparable.
Some friars chose to leave the Earth Star, while others chose to fight with the invaders to the end.
And I'm the one who chose to fight to the end, but no one thought that in addition to the underworld and the demon world, there are more powerful underworld cultivation and demon cultivation behind me. Even if there is strong foreign aid on the Earth Star, it still doesn't help. In the First World War, I was hit by a kind of poison called shadowless magic poison of the demon family. This kind of magic poison will not immediately let people fall, but can turn people into demons.
The purpose of the demon world is to turn me into a demon and become a member of the demon world.
How could it be? Hearing this, Yi Tian nodded slightly.
This was the first time he had a more detailed understanding of the original disaster. Is there any connection between these demonic soul cultivation bodies and shadowless demonic poison? Yi Tian asked in a deep voice. Hua Su's virtual shadow nodded and said, yes, that's right. The shadowless magic poison can turn people into demons, but because I was in a high state at the beginning, I have cultivated in the Heavenly Palace. Heavenly Palace. This time, Yinai was shocked. Yes, but what can I do even if I practice in the Heavenly Palace? I commanded the whole Kunlun family at the beginning, but I still failed. With my original cultivation, I was reluctant to resist the attack of shadowless magic and poison. If the confrontation failed, there would be only one end, that is, it would fall. And the existence of the demon cultivation soul body can give me more energy to slow down the falling speed, but at the same time, these souls are also a double-edged sword, which makes me go farther and farther on the road of demonization. But I'm not reconciled. I hate the demons and the souls of these demons, but I have to rely on them to continue to survive. I just hope to see the Kunlun family revitalize one day. Hua Su said with a complicated look, and I can't leave this mirage prison and the souls of these demon families. Once I leave here, without these souls, I may soon lose this consciousness. I can't see the revitalization of the Kunlun family. I die in peace. But even so, I don't think I have much time. Before I completely demonize, I will choose to end myself and won't let the demon family succeed. Therefore, my Kunlun people, you must revive the Kunlun people. Even if there is only one Kunlun people, my family will not be cut off. But, Master Hua Su. What Yi Tiangang wanted to say, but Hua Su interrupted. Yi Tiangang, my clan, don't talk first. You can find here and enter this mirage prison that no one can enter, which is enough to show you're extraordinary. In the mirage prison, my cultivation fell badly. Last time, because of that mask, I spent a lot of accumulated energy. Now I don't know how long I can support. Fortunately, I can see it today. There are some things I have to tell you. If I don't say it now, maybe I won't have a chance to say it at the next moment. However, Elder Hua Su, I mean to see if I can completely remove the shadowless magic poison for the Elder. To remove the poison, I need to check the Elder's body. Yi Tian said solemnly. It's useless. No one can solve it. I've studied the poison for countless years and still can't solve it. You don't have to bother. You'd better listen to me first. Hua Su's virtual shadow shook his head and said, what I'm going to say next is very important. Just listen carefully and don't interrupt me. Yi Tian looked at Hua Su's shadow silently, but he still nodded. First, even if you know that the enemies who caused the human race to suffer great disaster are Ming Xiu and Demon Xiu, don't act rashly and don't try to revenge them. You are the only hope of the Kunlun family. If you don't practice in the Heavenly Palace, don't do it to them. It's not too late for a gentleman to revenge. Hua Su's virtual shadow stared at Yi Tian and said, did you write it down? Yi Tian looked at Hua Su's shadow with a complicated look and said, Senior Hua Su, it's not the younger generation who wants to interrupt you. There are some things I have to explain. You just need to answer and write it down. Hua Su shook his head and stared at Yi Tian. Yi Tian showed a wry smile. I wrote it down, but what I want to say is that I have fought against the Ming clan and have just experienced a big war. Ah. Have you started a war with the underworld? Hua Su was stunned when he heard the speech, and then looked at Yi Tian and smiled. Yes, my Kunlun people can escape from the hands of the Ming people. It's really beyond my expectation. It seems that you are stronger than my expectation. This makes Yi Tian feel speechless. He said with some tears and smiles, Elder Hua Su, it's not like what you said. The war between me and the Ming clan resulted in the great defeat of the Ming clan. Those Ming practitioners were killed and injured countless. If I didn't intend to release those defeated soldiers and return to the underworld, I'm afraid none of them could escape. What? You hand it again, what you say is true, asked Hua Su in a shocked voice. Yi Tian confirmed and nodded, of course it's all true. How can the younger generation lie to the elder? Hua Su smelled the speech and said, no, the underworld has always wanted to invade the Earth Star.
When it invaded the Earth star, it suffered heavy losses. After many years of cultivation and rest, it is impossible to send only some underworld practitioners with low cultivation to come here.
Is there any conspiracy among them? Tian felt speechless again. Why did he think that the meditation he defeated was just some meditation with low accomplishments? Can't there be those very powerful meditation? It seems that Huasu still regarded himself as an ordinary monk in Yuanying territory.
He couldn't think of his strength and the strength of the Maitreya palace he was in charge of. He pondered a little and said, Master Huasu, things are not what you think. The total number of nether cultivation of the Earth star has reached more than 10 million this time. There are also nether emperors, but some of them have been killed by the younger generation, and nearly 100 nether cultivation in the nether realm have also been killed.
Really? You can kill more than 100 nether masters and several nether emperors?
Even if there are more than 20 great friars in Yupu territory around you, you can't do it.
How can you achieve such a record? Are you really not lying? Huashu asked almost silently. Of course not.
Oh, by the way, these are the skeletons and tarsals of several Ming emperors.
Please have a look.
Tian, who was very speechless, knew that Huasu could not believe it without taking out something. He spoke and motioned, and several incomplete bones of Emperor Ming appeared in front of him. As soon as these bones appeared, they immediately attracted the eyes of Hua Shuiying. Huasu's virtual shadow looked down, then looked puzzled and said, although these attached bones are used by the high-level Ming cultivation, they should not belong to the Ming Emperor, which is completely inconsistent with the attached bones of the Ming Emperor in my memory.
Maybe you made a mistake. You didn't kill the Ming Emperor.
I said, with the cultivation of the Ming Emperor, you can't be easily killed.
Tian looked stifled and immediately said, that's right.
I scared the Emperor of the Underworld and didn't dare to use his own bones, so he replaced them with other bones. Just like disguise, if his clothes were obvious, he changed into another set of inconspicuous clothes.
These are the bones they used at that time.
They are all storage bones, but there are other more advanced skeleton bones in these storage bones.
Take them now, come out and show Elder Huasu.
As he spoke, Tian reached out and took a piece of attached bone into his hand. The next moment, a tall and complete white attached bone appeared in front of him. The attached bone is more than 3 feet high, and the whole body is crystal clear. Although it is made of bone, it looks like jade.
Ah! This is the Moon Spirit Ghost Emperor.
When Huasu saw the skeleton attached to the bone, he pointed to a crescent pattern on the skull and exclaimed.
Tian smiled and said, what are the names of those Ming emperors? The younger generation didn't come and ask. Anyway, if you see them, you'll kill them. Here's more.
As he spoke, Tian gestured continuously and took out 2 very high-level skeletons again.
Ah, this is the Ghost Emperor. This is Emperor Fengming.
God, my people, you killed the Emperor Fengming, said Huashu with a tremor in his voice.
Fengming Emperor? This name is the first time I've heard of it. Is this Fengming Emperor very powerful?
Tian asked with a smile when he saw that the skeleton and bone Huashu referred to was carried by the demon emperor killed in the underworld.
Fengming Emperor, Tian, you killed Fengming Emperor, but you still don't know his identity.
He is the strongest in the underworld and the king of the whole underworld. It was it that led the underworld to attack the Earth star. All the friars who met Fengming Emperor died except me, and even no one else knew that the underworld had invaded the Earth star.
Huashu recalled. My clan, you really impressed me. I underestimated your strength even though you achieved such a record. Well, I won't ask you how you did it, but I still want to give you some advice.
When the underworld attacked the Earth star, except when it captured the Earth star, a powerful ghost from a higher interface fell, but its remnant soul was destroyed by the underworld. Take away the world. Even the remnant spirits can't compete with friars at our level, so you must be careful and remember. In those years, some remnant spirits of the ghost god were sealed in the ghost mask.
Remember not to be obtained by the ghost cultivation.
Otherwise, after the fusion of the remnant spirits of the ghost god, they will be invincible on the Earth star. When Huasu mentioned this, Tian stood up and said, Elder Huasu, the mask has been destroyed, and the ghost of the god of the underworld has indeed been integrated with other remnant souls, but I still killed the integrated remnant souls. After putting the underworld back to the underworld, I took my strong man into the underworld and killed the river and the sea in the underworld.
Now the underworld cultivation is already surviving. If there is enough time, I will destroy the whole underworld, it's just a matter of time. Huasu's virtual shadow looked at Yi Tian and said nothing for a long time. After a long time, he continued to say, I believe what you said is true, but it's incredible. It seems that he underestimated you just now. Well, I won't ask you how you did it.
In short, this is a great happy event for our Kunlun family.
Heaven pity me. It's time for our Kunlun family to rise at last. Now that you have such strength, there are some things I have to tell you.
Huasu's voice gradually became excited.
Senior, please say. Yi Tian nodded slightly.
Huasu seemed to take a long breath and said, at the time of the Earth Star disaster, in order to preserve the incense of the Kunlun people, I sealed 2 batches of congenital spirit jade, a total of 216 children of the Kunlun people. These children were eroded by the ashes of the disaster. If they were not sealed, I'm afraid they would fall down at that time. Now the congenital spirit jade of 108 of the sealed disciples has disappeared, and the other batch of 108 disciples are in the small village in Panglai. What you need to do is to find Xia Penglai, take back the congenital Lingyu that sealed the 108 disciples, and then find another group of disciples.
No matter how many years it takes, you should find a way to remove the seals from them. It's this thing.
Yi Tian's look became strange. Elder Huasu, the younger generation of these 2 groups of Kunlun disciples have been found. One of them was indeed obtained from Xia Penglai, and the other was obtained from earthly people. It is the first group to be found. Moreover, these disciples have been relieved of the poison of robbing embers, and their cultivation has made great progress.
Really, you did this in advance?
Huasu was excited again.
Yes.
Yi Tian nodded slightly and said in a heavy voice, only that group of Kunlun disciples, because they fell into the hands of earthly people, were shattered by people. As a result, the 12 disciples were demonized and their temperament changed greatly. In order not to bring disaster to the world, they all ended themselves.
Huasu heard the speech and was silent for a moment. Then he sighed and said, you are worthy of being the best son of our Kunlun family. It's really valuable to be able to do this. At the beginning, I sealed these disciples and thought it would be the best result to have 10% of them survive. Unexpectedly, I was shocked that you could do this. You should have the ability to remove the ashes. This alone has surpassed all the places in those years Xingren friars. If you can meet those surviving Kunlun children, you will have no regrets even if you die. This is not a problem. Those Kunlun practitioners are in the magic weapon cave that the younger generation carries. If the elder wants to see them, I'll let them out. Yi Tian said with a moving look.
Ah! I didn't expect you to have such rare treasures as the magic weapon cave.
Please come out and meet them. Huasu's voice became excited again. Alas, is the magic weapon cave still a rare treasure? It seems that the generation gap between myself and Huasu is still very big.
Yi Tianqing Feijia was in the middle of his stomach, but his hand was not slow. He gestured and a magic weapon cave appeared in front of him. After the retreat, Yi Tian took Ningyao's magic weapon cave, his own disciples, and the magic weapon cave where the dead and Kunlun practitioners were located, so that he could practice at ease. The magic weapon cave taken out this time is naturally the one where Kunlun practitioners and their disciples are located. With the rapid enlargement of the magic weapon cave, Yi Tian hit the gate of the cave with a magic power, lifted the prohibition, and then passed the Boyson. Kunlun disciples leave the cave. With his voice, many Kunlun practitioners rushed out, and more than 130 people came out.
Well, Yi Tian didn't say that he killed 12 by himself, which should be 96, but how can there be so many?
No, those are not my sealed children, but they are really my Kunlun family.
I see. They are their children.
Looking at these Kunlun practices in front of us, Huasu's virtual shadow was incoherent. Kunlun Xiu, who came out of the magic weapon cave, just wanted to salute Yi Tian, but when he saw the Huasu virtual shadow in front of him, many Kunlun Xiu became excited. The 96 Kunlun Shou stared at the virtual shadow, and then knelt down. Lao Zu. Hua Su erased their memory of the Earth Star disaster, but did not erase other memories. They naturally recognized Hua Su. Okay. Hua Su said a few good words excitedly, shouted some names at random, and then calmed his mood and said, "Very good.
I didn't expect that we would meet again.
You not only robbed the embers, but also entered the realm of God.
It's a great wedding. Lao Zu, thank our ancestors for all this. Without our ancestors, we will not be today." Ko Yuanshuan looked at Yi Tian and said,
"Yi Tian, don't match it with your younger generation in the future. Although I don't know how you joined the Sui Emperor's family and became the Sui Emperor's own disciple, the Sui Emperor's own disciple's generation is much higher than me.
I can feel the smell of the Sui Emperor on you. Is it the true fire of Samadhi handed down to you by his old family?
In that case, I should match it with my ancestor."
Hua Su also looked at Yi Tian and said slowly, "Elder Hua Su, you don't have to do this?" Yi Tian shook his head and said, "Do you admit that you are a descendant of Kunlun?"
Hua Su asked, looking at Yi Tian. "Of course, I'm naturally a Kunlun vein."
Yi Tian immediately replied. What else can he say at this time?
Hua Su smiled mildly when he heard the speech. Since this is the case, the Kunlun family attaches great importance to etiquette, and etiquette cannot be abolished. Then you are the ancestor of the Kunlun family, to be exact, the second ancestor.
Well, then I won't respect you. Yi Tian knew that the debate must end like this.
Anyway, it was just a title, so he simply agreed.
Hua Su smiled and nodded. That's good. Are these Kunlun children?
As she spoke, she turned to those Kunlun Shou standing on one side. Yi Tiandao said, "These Kunlun disciples came from a place in Kanglan spiritual region. Once I went there and saw a group of Kunlun children. It was at the time of the great disaster that I left the Earth Star to cross the void and arrived there. In Kanglan spiritual region, the Kunlun people were called Xingyi clan." When Yi Tian said this, Hua Su showed a deep meditation, and then said, "I'm sure that no one of the Kunlun people left Earthstar when the Demon Clan and the Ming Clan jointly attacked Earthstar.
However, I think of one thing.
Before that, Earthstar had a major crisis, which can also be regarded as a big disaster. The time between the two disasters has been a long time. At that time, a group of disciples did leave Earthstar."
Can you say that you met it they?
It should be. The Kunlun people there are more used to calling Earthstar the Holy Land spiritual domain.
Yi Tian thought for a moment and said,
"Well, today is really a good day. I can see so many people and know the news of another people, and the founder has the original idea of Sui Huang Temple. He is so powerful. It's time for the Kunlun people to regain their prestige." Hua Su's virtual shadow was obviously in a good mood, and even his fuzzy eyes bent with laughter. Then she asked, "How many Kunlun people are there in Kanglan spirit domain and how strong are they?" Yi Tian replied, "The total number is more than 10,000.
As for strength, there are 18 great friars who have entered Yupu territory."
Okay, that's great. I can rest in peace even if I know the news.
By the way, Grandmaster, another group of Kunlun people sealed by congenital spirit jade, can you let me have a look?
Hua Su continued. Naturally, there is no problem. Yi Tian spoke and motioned, and Kunlun Xiu, sealed by congenital spirit jade, appeared in front of him. Up to now, Ko Yuanshu and Kunlun Xiu has just learned the news that this group of Kunlun Xiu has been rescued by Yi Tian. Seeing the familiar faces in the congenital spirit jade, those former classmates with extremely painful expressions show a sad look on their faces.
Hua Su's virtual shadow moved slowly in front of many sealed Kunlun shavings, and remained silent.
After seeing all the sealed Kunlunxio, he looked at Yi Tian and said excitedly, "When I made this choice, I just thought that one day, in case. I really didn't expect that the decision was so correct. Fortunately, I met the ancestor, I was able to get rid of the smell of robbery and destruction on them and recover again. It can be said that the revitalization of the whole Kunlun nationality depends on the strength of the ancestor." Hua Xu was very grateful. As he spoke, Hua Su's virtual shadow bowed to Yi Tianying.
"It's not necessary.
These sealed disciples can be saved. Thanks to the friars of Xiaopanlai, I found them by chance.
Yi Tian waved his hand and said.
Huasu nodded and said, up to now, there is only Panglai Pavilion except the Kunlun people who survived the great disaster. As for Xia Panglai, when a mirage opened, I met the friars of Xia Panglai and entrusted them to take care of their disciples.
In other words, Xia Panglai is also kind to the Kunlun people.
Yi Tiandao said, it is with this in mind that I did not embarrass them.
However, although there are many high-level friars in Xia Panglai, they only know how to protect themselves. They don't care about the Terrans on the Earth Star and let foreign forces bully them. This also makes me very angry.
Huasu sighed and said, who can know the ferocity of the Ming and demon families without experiencing the great disaster?
Even if little Panglai Friar stepped forward, what can he do?
Yi Tian shook his head when he heard the speech, that's all, but how can you know if you don't try?
At least many things can be prepared in advance.
If you prepare early, the Pluto will not be able to enter the Earth star so easily.
Naturally, he didn't agree with Huashu's remarks.
In those days, he was just a monk in Longmen territory.
He knew the danger that Earthstar might face.
He also tried all kinds of ways to collect forces from all parties and was ready to fight against alien races and protect Earthstar. The friars of Little Panglai did nothing. They only knew how to protect themselves and didn't care about the people in the world. In this way, painting the earth as a prison and sticking to the rules is a great opportunity.
How can they fall on them? Alas, people are different.
Huashu sighed, and then didn't go on.
Yi Tian also stopped talking about this topic. He said to Huasu, these sealed Kunlun people will begin to get rid of their burning smell after I go back. You also have to leave here.
Although this is a mirage prison, you may not have no way to leave the soul of the demon family.
Since you don't want to be demonized, you might as well try. If you really can't, you can do whatever you want. Huasu's virtual shadow hesitated and said, it's not necessary to look at my noumenon.
I'll tell you about the influence of shadowless magic poison and demon family soul on me.
If the Grandmaster can think of a way after listening, it's natural. If he's still helpless, it's useless to look at my noumenon.
Well, you say it.
Yi Tian nodded immediately.
Huashu wrote, shadowless magic poison invades every corner of my body, making my body full of magic factors, which seriously degrades my body function. The soul body of demon cultivation is very special, which can provide me with energy that will not be completely exhausted, but the soul body of demon cultivation contains more magic factors.
That is to make my body very dependent on this demon family soul body.
If I want to leave here without falling down, you can only first remove the dependence on the demon family soul. After hearing this, Yi Tian asked, since the mirage fog is the soul of demon cultivation, the nourishment that can give you can only be the soul.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Huasu's virtual shadow nodded. What if you nourish your soul with other natural materials and earth treasures? Yi Tian continued.
Huashu said without hesitation, there are no substitutes for mending souls, but there are only a few talented earth treasures that can replace mending souls, and they are all legendary earth treasures, which are not available on the Earth Star at all.
Moreover, even if a substitute is found, shadowless ghost poison will make me demonized, but the speed is slower.
To solve this problem, in addition to finding a substitute for mending souls, you also need to remove the shadowless magic poison. It's too difficult to meet these two conditions at the same time. Take this and see if you can remove the shadowless magic poison.
As soon as Yi Tianlu pondered, he took out a drop of fortune liquid wrapped in medicine film from Zumaji, and Huashu said, this?
Huasu took a look at the drop of creation liquid, hesitated a little, then stretched out his hand to the drop of creation liquid, and then bent his fingers to the spirit jade coffin. The lid of the coffin opened slowly, revealing the flesh of Huasu inside. As soon as Yi Tian glanced, he immediately understood the reason why Huasu refused to let himself see the flesh. It turned out that Huasu, who was extremely beautiful in the coffin, had become a little dark, far from what he had seen a few years ago. After the lid of the spirit jade coffin was opened, the flying drop of fortune liquid fell towards Huashu's mouth. When the liquid fell to her lips, Huasu opened his blackened lips gently, and the liquid fell into her mouth. At this time, most of the people present looked nervously at the Lingyu coffin and felt the change of Huashu's flesh. The only one who didn't feel nervous was Yu Yan. He knew the ability of Dante. Yi Tian took out this kind of talent. It must be no problem. Yu Yan now completely worships Yi Tian without any theoretical basis. He just feels that because he is Yi Tian, he must do it. Sure enough, after Huasu's flesh took a few breaths of that drop of fortune liquid, the black on Huasu's face began to fade slowly, and soon became white, delicate, and radiant. The empty shadow of Huasu in the air suddenly fell down and integrated into Huasu's flesh. At the next moment, Huasu's body with closed eyes slowly opened his eyes, sat up slowly in the spirit jade coffin, and then stood up. His body shape flashed out of the spirit jade coffin. Lao Zu! Many Kunlun practitioners shouted excitedly. With their knowledge, although they don't know whether Yi Tian has completely eliminated the shadowless magic poison, it is obvious that Huasu's state is much better than before. How? When Huasu slowly closed his eyes and felt something, when he opened his eyes again, Yi Tian asked with a smile. Thank you, Master Huasu. After careful inspection, the shadowless magic poison was indeed gone, and the vitality of my whole body was completely restored. Huasu said excitedly, his face glowing with a moving look, like a girl, full of vitality. That's good. Yi Tian nodded with a smile and continued, then repair your soul now, eliminate the dependence on the demon soul body, and completely eliminate the demon factor. I'm sorry to bother my grandmaster. This time, Huasu didn't refuse, but looked at Yi Tian expectantly. From the matter of expelling shadowless magic poison just now, she saw that the magic of Yi Tian had far exceeded her expectations. After 3 years, this young man has grown to this point. He is no longer a low-level friar who needs his own rescue, but a supernatural superman who can create all kinds of miracles. Yi Tian gestured again. A jade bottle appeared in his hand and was sent to Huasu. Is it wine? Huasu opened the cork, smelled it a little, and asked in surprise. Yi Tian smiled and nodded, yes, it is indeed wine here. However, it is not an ordinary wine, but a medicinal wine for cutting bones and washing marrow. After you take it, you can not only dispel the evil factor, but also improve your cultivation physique and help you recover to the original state as soon as possible. Thank you, Grandmaster. Huasu smelled the speech and said thanks. He opened his mouth and inhaled the Tiger King medicinal wine in the jade bottle. Huasu, go to the cave and refine the medicine. Yi Tian took out a magic weapon cave and magnified it in front of Huasu. He said that when cutting bones and washing marrow, many dirty impurities will be discharged. As a female monk, Huasu was too embarrassed in front of many disciples. Upon hearing the speech, Huasu cast a grateful glance at Yi Tian and walked slowly into the cave. But in an hour, Huashu walked out of the magic weapon cave again. At this time, looking at her whole person and before entering the cave, there were some new changes. Her whole body took on a new look, put on new clothes, and coupled with his beautiful face, it gave people a feeling of floating like an immortal. Before he entered the magic weapon cave, he only had the cultivation of Longmen realm. When he came out, he could feel the breath of Jindan realm. It's amazing how quickly you can recover your accomplishments. Great, Master. I really know the magic factor, and I feel my vitality has increased several times. It's just that it took so much time for the Master to wait. Huasu said happily. Hee, it doesn't hurt. For those of us who practice, an hour's time is just passing by. Yi Tian waved his hand casually. Only 1 hour? Huasu asked stupidly, how do I feel that at least 4 or 5 hours have passed? Ah, that's right. In this magic weapon cave, there are 5 times the time field inside. The same time in the magic weapon cave is 5 times the time outside, so you will think the time will be a little longer. Yi Tian immediately explained. Is there such a magic weapon, the cave? I'm afraid such a treasure is rare in Zutian Wanyu. Hearing Yi Tian's words, Huasu immediately turned his eyes to the magic weapon cave and said in surprise. Haha, Huasu, you're wrong. There are at least 100 magic caves in the Mithraea Palace. Moreover, the fields inside are arranged by the Mithraea Palace's own field masters. If necessary, as long as there are enough materials, it's not a problem to arrange thousands of them.
Yi Tian smiled at the speech.
There is such a powerful field master.
Hua Su was stunned and asked, the Mithraea palace mentioned by the ancestor should be the ancestral door created by the ancestor?
Yi Tian nodded. Yes, it was the disciples of the Mithraea palace who fought against the netherworld with their own strength. Then they entered the netherworld and killed the nether god after the fusion of residual souls. It must be a wonderful scene, but it's a pity that I missed such a big event and didn't see the destruction of Mingxia with my own eyes. Huashu said reluctantly.
Yi Tian said, it doesn't hurt. Maybe the devil will invade the Earth star soon. If you like, you can see how we destroy the devil. Master, don't take it lightly. The devil cultivation is far more powerful than the nether cultivation.
It's by no means comparable to the nether cultivation.
You should be cautious about the devil cultivation.
Hearing the speech, Hua Su said with some worry. It's natural, but those are all later words.
Now I'll nourish your soul and see if you can be unaffected without the demon soul cultivation body.
Yi Tian didn't want to say more here, so he changed the topic.
Good. Huashu still looked a little heavy, perhaps for the upcoming invasion of the underworld. And wait. Yi Tian turned and entered the magic weapon cave.
When he came out again, he had a piece of ice lotus leaf and a small spiritual root in his hand.
Try it at the same time. Okay. Huasu promised and put ice lotus and lingzhen into his mouth at the same time.
At the entrance of the ice lotus, a chill came into being. Huasu couldn't help shivering, but after the shivering, he felt that his body was incomparably comfortable. Not only the injured soul recovered in a moment, but also his mind was growing rapidly. She closed her eyes and quickly refined the medicine. The shock in her heart was beyond measure. Even the legendary elixir will not have such an effect.
This is completely a change of mind. What degree you want to achieve is what degree you really achieve.
About half an hour later, Huasu finally opened her eyes slowly. At this time, her eyes were different from those before. Her eyes were clear, like autumn water, with an invisible pressure and awe-inspiring spirit.
Shizu, these natural materials and earth treasures must be very precious?
My soul has recovered as before, and I don't need these soul bodies anymore.
Huasu's expression this time is more excited than ever before.
The shadowless magic poison is removed, and she doesn't need the devil to repair the soul body, which means that she is completely reborn. You can get out of the mirage prison and go anywhere you want. As long as we can save you from the sea of suffering, we can't cherish any natural materials and earth treasures. Since we don't need the devil to repair the soul body, they have no meaning to exist. From then on, there will be no mirage prison. Yi Tian looked at the mirage fog surging around, and his voice began to freeze.
Huasu nodded and said, it's all because the devil cultivation is too cruel.
Although there are a lot of ghost cultivation bodies put in, they can't stand it and are consumed by me for a long time. Therefore, every 50 years or so, Mirage Prison will come out of the space and attract friars in the West Sea to look for treasure. Many friars who are demonized will stay here forever and eventually become a member of the devil cultivation body. Those friars who are lucky to leave are in order not to meet the requirements of demonization. The ghost soul cultivation body will not let them enter again, but will avoid the danger of falling. Speaking of, many demon soul cultivation bodies here are also practitioners. Hearing Huasu's words, Yi Tian immediately understood the strange situations when the mirage opened.
This is the case. Mirage. Mirage Prison. How similar the two names are.
At the beginning, I was in a low state. I didn't find the mystery, and I didn't have the ability to save more mountain people. The cultivation of those mountain people themselves is not high, and their souls are even weaker.
Once demonized, they are not the original human beings, and they have the nature of demon cultivation.
If you want to save the souls of these mountain people, unless there are many Sancheng and Sancheng Lotus, let their souls return to reshape their flesh, and then expel their demons.
This is what Yi Tian can't do at all.
After thinking about it, Yi Tian asked, the mirage once in 50 years has been opened.
This situation in Mustard Space is the hands and feet of the demon clan?
Huashu rode, I haven't figured it out, but I have some guesses. This thing should not be owned by the demon family, but more like a legacy of a great power in the past, that is, the small world of great power refining in the legend. This kind of thing was discovered by the demon family by chance, and I was trapped by the demon family when the mirage opened. Then every 50 years or so, this mustard space will disappear. The time is not very regular, and I don't know the reason.
Is it possible that when the aura in the space is reduced to a certain extent, the mustard space will automatically open, absorb enough aura, and then close again?
The demon family doesn't know the principle, but mistakenly uses this situation.
Tian said in a deep voice. This mustard space looks like a magic weapon cave, which has its own space. But it is far from the magic weapon that can be compared with the cave. This is the real space, which is incorporated into mustard. It is a great magic power to refine the small world. Tian also saw a little introduction from some popular ancient books, but he didn't know much. The reason mentioned just now was just an idea. When he observed the meteorite from the heavenly eye, he did not find any field. In the void, the aura is thin, and in the sea area, it is the place with the strongest aura. I think it's really possible for the Grandmaster to say so. Hua Su nodded as soon as he thought about it. Well, the reason is not important for the time being. We'd better get rid of these demon soul cultivation bodies first. Otherwise, if we open them again, a monk will lose his life in vain.
Tian said to the mirage fog around him. With his voice, the surrounding grey mirage fog surged again.
It can be seen that these evil spirits can understand Tian's meaning. Good.
Hua Su nodded slightly. Tian said no more and released the original spiritual fire again. The light of the fire turned into a towering fire and surged towards the mirage fog around. The fire was raging, the mirage fog rolled, one grey and one red, and the two were entangled.
However, how can the soul body compare with the original spiritual fire of Tian?
The grey fog sees the turbulent spiritual fire, just as the ice and snow sees the hot ice. It is rapidly dissolving. With the passage of time, the mirage fog is slowly decreasing and thinning. Until the end, the whole space was clear, and there was no grey mirage.
Tian opened his mind and observed the small world, mountains and rivers. There were many places where spiritual materials grew.
In some places, he could see the trace of monsters, but the realm was not very high. In some places, pavilions have been built, and the scenery is like a fairyland. The square is nearly 1,000 miles in size.
The last time he entered the mirage, Tian returned halfway.
The place he had visited was only a tiny part of this space. Until this time, he was able to have a glimpse of the whole picture, and he couldn't help sighing in his heart.
What kind of magic power can refine such a big small world into mustard?
Not only Tian, but also others were very surprised and shocked by the surrounding environment.
Tian's divine thoughts covered the buildings and observed them.
They seemed to be the living and cultivation place of monks. Relying on his divine thoughts alone, he didn't find anything too valuable. At this time, it was inconvenient for him to check it immediately. After all, it was Huashu's mirage prison. If it belonged, it was still Huashu's home.
Hua Su, what about this mustard space? Have you ever thought of taking it back? Tian asked.
Huashu glanced around and said, I've walked around this space and know it like the back of my hand. Being imprisoned here for many years, Mirage Prison is like my own nightmare.
I really don't want to see any scenery here. Otherwise, it will remind me of the dark days at any time. Moreover, I can't get in and out of this space freely. This thing is useless to me. If my ancestor can have it, the way to take it away is to take it away. If I can't take it away, whatever happens. I don't want to see every plant here again. Moreover, I want to leave here now. Well, in that case, let's leave here first. Tian nodded slightly, and then let those Kunlun practitioners enter the magic weapon cave. He also included the sealed Kunlun people in Shumi Ring. The next moment, he took Yu Yan and Hua Su to the edge of the small world. When flying to the gray space barrier, Tian took out the 5 elements of beads, slightly urged, pointed to the misty light and said to chemistry, follow me, as long as you are in this halo, you can naturally walk through the space barrier at will. This treasure is really magical. Huasu murmured with a surprised look at the shining 5-element beads. Yi Tian didn't say anything more. He moved and began to fly slowly to the barrier. Yu Yan and Huasu followed, and it took a long time to finally get out of this world and come to the outside of the meteorite. Is it you? As soon as he appeared outside the meteorite, Yi Tian suddenly found that Xia Penglei's ancestor and the Supreme Elder were next to the meteorite, and he couldn't help frowning. When two little Penglai friars saw Yi Tian-san coming out of the meteorite, they also jumped fiercely, and their body shape retreated rapidly. Lu Courtier! Huasu suddenly called. When Xiao Penglai's grandfather heard the call, he stabilized his body and threw a fist at Huasu. Senior, we have come to report something. Although we know we can't enter the space, we just tell it outside the space for peace of mind. It's about those Kunlun disciples. Since Lord Yi is here, I'm finally relieved. You are really old friends. You've been bothering me for years. I'll express my gratitude later. Huashu nodded slightly. Then he looked at Yi Tian and said, Grandmaster, if Xia Penglai is in trouble, please look at these origins in the past and help each other. Zhu sure? The two friars of Little Penglai were stunned when they heard that their predecessors were calling Yi Tian their ancestor. Yi Tian took a look at them and nodded to Huasu. Since you said so, if Xiao Penglai asks for the Maitreya Palace, I will do it once. However, there is a saying that those who love return and those who are blessed to go will be blessed. I hope you can do it yourself. Yes. The courtier of Laozu Road, Xia Penglai, quickly agreed and stood in place slightly embarrassed. Then, as if he had made a great determination, he said to Yi Tian, Lord Yi, since the Earth Star now has a common way to advance and retreat, our Little Penglai is willing to fight the demon world with the Miro Palace. I don't know what Yi Gong's idea is? Have you figured it out? Yi Tian asked non-committally. Yes, in the past, Little Penglai was alone and could not stand against any enemy. That's why we are wise to protect ourselves, because it is a sure defeat. Now that there is a possibility of competition, the friars of Little Penglai will not stand idly by. Moreover, many of his predecessors died in the hands of the underworld. How can we still survive? In fact, we save them. Strength is ultimately to have enough strength to avenge one day. Lu Courtier said solemnly. Yi Tianlu nodded and said, well, there should be no danger except the demon world on the Earth Star now. You can master the information by yourself. If the war starts at that time, you can come to the war, but keep your hard-earned strength. Friars below Huashan will not participate in the war. Just the two of us are above the realm of God, the courtier said stiffly. Then you too can participate. Yi Tian said calmly. However, Lord Yi, we friars in Little Penglai are not afraid of death. Even if we die, we have to take revenge. Lu Courtier said this with some blood, and his mood became excited. With the Maitreya Palace, you don't need your low-level disciples to die needlessly. Yi Tian glanced at Lu's courtiers and said. Knowing that he was despised by Yi Tian, the Lu courtier argued, Lord Yi, your disciples of the Maitreya Palace can die to protect the Earth Star. Can't we disciples of Xia Penglai? In order to protect our homeland and revenge, I said that the disciples of Xia Penglai will fight as long as they have a glimmer of hope. He, who said that the disciples of the Maitreya Palace died to protect the Earth Star? In the War of the Ming nationality, none of the disciples of the Maitreya Palace were killed or injured. Yi Tian smiled. Yu Yan next to him also smiled. He knew in his heart that the palace master was Xuanxiang. No casualties. Courtier Lu and the eldest prince looked at each other and didn't know how to answer. How is that possible? They know that Ningxiu is powerful. Grandmaster, how many people in the Maitreya Palace participated in the war? Huashu suddenly asked. She believes that Yi Tian will not lie, and there is no need to lie at all. If she lies to deceive Little Penglai, it's easy to say, but Yi Tian says so to prevent ordinary disciples of Little Penglai from participating in the war. There are more than 100,000 people participating in the war successively. Yi Tian said truthfully. More than 100,000? More than 100,000? This time, not only the Lu courtiers and the supreme elder of Little Penglai were stunned,
but even Hua Su was a little stupid. She was the first to ask about the situation of the Mithraea. At first, he thought that the Mithraea was no more than 10,000 people, which was the limit.
Unexpectedly, there are more than 100,000 people participating in the war alone. How many people should there be in the Mithraea palace?
But then Yi Tian's words surprised them out of their chin. In addition to more than 100,000 disciples, there are 80,000 martial spirit puppets.
Most of them are half-step incarnation, and a few are the peak of Huashan.
In addition, there are more than 400,000 demons, including level 6 and level 7 demons. Yi Tian's words made the three people not slow down for a long time. In particular, the Lu courtiers of Little Panglai have met the 8 great friars of Yupu territory in the Mithraea palace, and learned the power of mountain and river seal. Then they heard that the power of the Mithraea palace has reached such a level that it has been completely petrified. Originally, they thought that participating in the fight against the demon clan was also a help to Yi Tian, but now it seems that in this matter, whether there is Xia Penglai or not is the same.
With such strength, even if there is a big monk in Yupu territory and a monk in Huashan territory, what can we do? Cannot play a fundamental role.
Realizing this, they had only one thought in their hearts, that is, how can the Mithraea palace be so powerful?
How could it be so powerful?
Grandmaster, how did the strength of the Mithraea palace develop? Asked Hua Shuqiang, a self-centered god. The 2 friars of Little Panglai wanted to know this very much. Therefore, they also looked at Yi Tian and listened carefully. Yi Tian smiled and said, I saw the sign that the Hades and demons were going to invade the Earth Star. Although my realm was still very low at that time, as a cultivator, I would never wait to die, nor could I be indifferent to the tragic fate that the Earth Star's compatriots are about to face. Therefore, I traveled all spiritual regions and continued to expand the Mira Palace, so I had such strength.
After hearing Yi Tian finish, Huashu 3 people are slightly disappointed. This answer can't satisfy them.
But one thing, all 3 of them can guess, is that Yi Tian has the means to fight against the sky. Otherwise, any friar in the spiritual realm will not be involved in the muddy water of Earth Star. At this time, Yi Tian looked at the 2 friars of Little Panglai and said, that's the way it is.
You can consider your own actions and join the queue to fight against demon cultivation. We welcome, but you don't have to let the low-level disciples die. This situation is different from before.
Now you are sure of victory, and it's meaningless to die.
Yes, then we'll go back and prepare.
The Lu courtier looked at Yi Tian with a complicated look, hugged and said to Yi Tian, then hugged Hua Su and Yu Yan, took the Supreme Elder and turned away from the void. Grandmaster, I didn't expect that our Kunlun clan has grown to such an extent. Although the Mithraea palace is not owned by the Kunlun clan, the Grandmaster is a Kunlun practitioner, which is equivalent to that of the Kunlun clan. From this point of view, I still need to step up my recovery of accomplishments. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be qualified to participate in the world of evil.
Hua Su also looked a little complicated.
This magic weapon cave with 5 times the time field will be given to you, and these pills.
I hope you can recover your cultivation as soon as possible. Yi Tianshan took out a magic weapon cave and several bottles of pills and handed them to Hua Su.
Thank you, Grandmaster. Hua Su took these things, touched the magic weapon cave with great love, put them into his shumi ring, and then opened the cork to have a look. Originally, this is a polite behavior, which seems to attach great importance to the gift given by the ancestor. However, when she smelled the smell of the pill in the jade bottle, she couldn't help showing a very surprised look.
Grandmaster, where did this pill come from?
Yi Tian naturally knew the reason why Hua Su was surprised, because the pill was the 8th pill he refined himself. He simply said, there is a branch of Taishio in the Mithraea palace, which is specially used to refine pills. However, these pills are refined by myself.
How could the Grandmaster refine pills? Hua Su opened his eyes again.
Yu Yan nearby wants to laugh, but some dare not. One of them is the palace master, while the other is the great power of the heavenly palace. Although the realm falls, it is also a real heavenly palace. He thought to himself, if the palace master can't refine pills, then who dares to say that he can refine pills in all the heavens and regions?
Yi Tian just nodded slightly and said, "Of course, these pills should be very helpful for you to recover your accomplishments. After all your usual barriers have been broken through, but only your accomplishments have been recovered. This is still different from the Kunlun disciples infected by looting embers. It shouldn't take too long to have such pills in a magic weapon cave with 5 times the flow rate of time." Huashu seemed to become excited. Yi Tian said no more, but looked at the meteorite in front of him. Then he pushed it with his hand, and the mustard space meteorite didn't move. With the strength of Yi Tian's right hand, he has the strength of millions of kilograms. The meteorite the size of a basketball hasn't moved. It really surprised Yi Tian. From this, he also thought about whether the meteorite looks small, but its own weight is the total weight of the small world. In that case, the weight of the meteorite has reached an immeasurable level. If that's the case, even monks who are more powerful than themselves are difficult to move at will. After all, it has reached the level of heavenly palace by strength alone. Although the strength of monks with high accomplishments will also improve with the realm, they will never be too abnormal. The most important thing for high-level friars is to rely on magic power, and all refined magic weapons can change their size. I think this mustard space is no exception. As long as it can change the size, it must need the assistance of God. If you want to use the divine mind, there must be a place where you can brand the soul mind. Thinking so, Yi Tian began to shine through the eyes of the sky and carefully observed the meteorite again. Before, he only looked at one direction of the meteorite. This time, he wanted to look around the meteorite carefully. Yu Yan and Hua Su naturally know Yi Tian's idea. They just want to use this mustard space for their own use. They tried to push the meteorite, but without exception, neither of them could push a penny. They also looked at the meteorite together with Yi Tian curiously. They naturally could think of what Yi Tian could think of. They all wanted to see if there were any symbols on it that could be branded with divine thoughts. They looked carefully for several times and found no rune marks. Finally, they gave up. But Yi Tian was not affected by them and was still watching carefully. Hua Su and Yu Yan looked at each other and shook their heads gently. Obviously, they both felt that Yi Tian would not succeed, because there were no rune marks on the meteorite. It is impossible for such a meteorite to be forced into the magic weapon cave. This unimaginable mustard space is definitely not used by friars at their level. The owner of this object is at least a figure in the fairy world. But Yi Tian observed so carefully that they didn't say much, but waited patiently. After all, Yi Tian's status is there. If he were another monk, I'm afraid they would have stopped drinking. Little by little, they waited for more than an hour. At one moment, Yi Tian suddenly made a gesture and took out the 5-element bead again. Then he urged the halo and disappeared from the meteorite. Senior Hua, the palace master may enter the space again and think of a way in it. Yu Yan shrugged and said. Hua Su shook his head, it's useless. No one can make a mechanism in it, and it's impossible to put it in front of me. Moreover, I'm very familiar with all the situations inside. There's no sign that can be branded with divine thoughts to recognize the Lord. It seems that the palace leader is disappointed this time. If you can really recognize the owner of this thing and carry it with you, with its weight and defensibility, and such a vast space, even if you encounter a strong enemy, no one can do anything as long as you hide inside. Yu Yan said with regret. Hua Su naturally thought of the powerful use of this object. If she hadn't been imprisoned in it for many years and was very disgusted with the small world inside, I'm afraid she would also love this mustard space. However, even if it is given to her now, she will not use it. It is easy to produce heart demons here and affect cultivation, and cultivation is the foundation of a monk. The two of them talked one by one here, waiting for Yi Tian to come out. Little by little, they waited for more than 2 hours. Finally, more than 2 hours later, Yi Tian suddenly flashed and appeared in front of the two people again. Strangely, Yi Tian, who came out of the inside, ignored the two people, but continued to look into the meteorite. Grandmaster, it's better to have a look later. No one can move the meteorite around. Yu Yan still didn't speak, but Hua Su said, I want to have a look at the old site of the Kunlun nationality. Well, let's go now. Yi Tian looked back at Hua Su and said with a smile.
Then a spell hit the meteorite somewhere. The next moment, the meteorite disappeared out of thin air.
Hua Su and Yu Yan were shocked.
In their eyes, they could see that there was only one possibility for the meteorite to disappear, that is, it was sent to Zumaji by Tian.
Such a mustard space was recognized by Tian and successfully taken away by him?
Hua Su and Yu Yan immediately felt that this kind of thing was really ridiculous.
This is an impossible thing. Palace leader, take it out again and let me see. Yu Yan finally couldn't help but say to Tian.
Oh.
I'm so interested. Take it out and have a look. Tian seemed to be in a good mood.
He smiled and motioned after saying this. The mustard space meteorite really appeared in front of Tian.
Believe it. This time, seeing is believing.
Yu Yan is really sure that the mustard space meteorite is really recognized by Tian. He tried to push the meteorite. Although he used all his mana and his physical strength, he still didn't shake a penny.
But Tian hit the mustard space meteorite with a magic power.
The meteorite seemed as light as nothing in an instant, rotating quickly in front of and behind Tian.
Get out of the way, or I'll smash you flat.
Tian saw that Yu Yan wanted to get close to the mustard space meteorite. He hurried to think. The meteorite was away from Yu Yan in an instant and hit a meteorite with a size of more than 10 feet in the distance.
Boom!
With a loud noise, a meteorite the size of a basketball suddenly collided with that big meteorite. The huge meteorite exploded and turned into countless dust and flew away everywhere.
Oh, my God!
Yu Yan almost screamed and retreated away from the mustard space meteorite.
This power, if you hit yourself, you can't hit it into meat foam?
It's not a terrible thing that the cloud and water in mustard space smashed the big meteorite, but it turned the meteorite into debris. Such a terrible scene is enough to show how powerful the impact force is.
It's so powerful.
Even Hua Su was stunned. Even with her experience of great power in the Heavenly Palace, she was really shocked.
The blow of this degree has far exceeded the strongest blow of Tiangong realm. But Tian can manipulate this thing to attack freely. Doesn't it mean that Tian, who uses mustard space meteorite, has the strength to crush the Heavenly Palace? Palace Master, hit the bigger one.
When Yu Yan was shocked, he pointed to a large meteorite hundreds of feet away. He also wanted to see how powerful this mustard space meteorite was.
Yu Yan, you really deserve to be a changeable devil. How did you become a child? You play so hard?
Tian laughed, gestured and collected the mustard space meteorite again.
In fact, Tian doesn't want to try again.
However, if he doesn't take the pill to restore mana, he can no longer drive this mustard space meteorite. The blow just now had consumed nearly 80% of his mana. This treasure is terrible, but it really consumes mana.
Wouldn't it be better if it didn't consume mana so much?
Thinking about this, Tian couldn't help smiling and said that Yu Yan was like a child.
He could have the idea just now. Isn't he like King Kong gourd baby, too whimsical? Secretly put a pill to restore mana into his mouth.
Tian gestured, took out the fierce soldier's flying sword, and then looked at Hua Su. Don't you have a magic weapon?
Hua Su shook his head. No, they have been taken away by the demon clan.
There are only personal belongings in my Shumi ring, not any magic weapons. Hearing the speech, Tian gestured, took out a green cloud shuttle and a half-immortal soldier flying sword, and sent them to Hua Su. Take it first, and use this flying magic weapon when you are on your way.
The ancestral master's magic weapon is really strange. There are even flying magic weapons. Hua Su sighed and took the two things. The recognition of the master of the magic weapon is roughly the same.
With Hua Su's experience, she naturally doesn't need any guidance. She quickly recognized the master of Qingyun shuttle and Banxian soldier flying sword, and then enlarged Qingyun shuttle. When he saw the internal structure of Qingyun shuttle, Hua Su hesitated.
What's the matter? Asked Tian.
Grandmaster, this magic weapon needs to be driven by the best fairy jade.
Isn't it a pity to use this precious best fairy jade in the flying magic weapon? It's better to use the flying sword to fly slowly. At most, it consumes some mana and can be supplemented after a little practice. Huasu said with some regret, staring at the 4 best fairy jade in the rune array. That's the reason? Huasu, you can rest assured that there are countless top-grade fairy jade in the Mithraea Palace. It's no problem to use it casually. Tian said with a smile. How can it be? There are very few top-grade fairy jade on Earthstar, which is an absolutely rare treasure of heaven and earth. There are more top-grade fairy jade in other spiritual regions, and there will never be too many. This kind of thing can be used in many places. It's a pity to use it here. In those years, with the strength of the Kunlun family, there were only 2 top-grade fairy jade inherited, and these 4 pieces were eliminated, which is really disappointing heartache. Huasu still didn't board the Green Cloud shuttle. Tian then took out a storage bag and threw it to Huasu. There are 10,000 top-grade fairy jade in it. You can use it to restore mana. The Mithraea Palace rewards disciples, which is based on 1,000 top-grade fairy jade. Huasu took the storage bag doubtfully, stamped the brand of divine thought and checked it. When I saw a large number of the best fairy jade inside, I couldn't help looking stifled again.